So you're left with this situation where we need to start thinking about a different kind of test called an antibody test, which, while it doesn't diagnose the coronavirus per se, it does tell people whether they have an immunity to it because they have antibodies, or whether they've never been infected at all, and so they won't be spreading it. If you knew that, and those tests are easy and they can be easily scaled, and you can do them in the millions, hundreds of millions, and it's just like a blood test. And if you did that, and if you really could scale that kind of test, you'd at least know something that we don't know now, and you'd be able to allow people who are currently self-quarantined or self-isolated, but who have immunity, to get back out to work and to help revive the country.
So where are we on that, Joe? I think that's where people ideally would like us to get a simple, quick test. Is there anything on the horizon that can scale, as you mentioned?
Yes. There's a company called United Biomedical out of Long Island that did a really good job during the SARS epidemic in terms of vaccines and diagnostics. They are conducting a test right now in Telluride, Colorado. The entire county has 8,000 people. They're trying to test as many as they can. The FDA has given them the go-ahead to do this. And if the results are accurate, which the company believes they are, they say they're in a position to be able to gin up to 1 million tests a month very quickly. Mount Sinai, some scientists at Mount Sinai have also put out a published protocol for how to do these tests, and with instructions how anybody else can do it. And I believe you're going to see very quick deployment of this test literally within the next couple of weeks. I would be surprised if that doesn't happen.
Joe Nocera, thanks so much for joining us with that interesting commentary and thoughts and analysis from your piece. Joe Nocera, Bloomberg opinion columnist. He's got a great column out on this whole testing issue. It is clearly front lines, and it's really important, Lisa.
Honestly, I think that he raises such a good point. If we could just find out who has immunity at this point, you could restart parts of the economy and know how far along the virus has really gotten. We don't know how many people have been exposed.
No, we don't. No, we don't. It's just extraordinary. Right now, let's head down to Washington, D.C. for world and national headlines with Nathan Hager. Nathan, what do you have?
Well, Paul, the House has begun debate in Washington on that record $2.2 trillion coronavirus stimulus package. Let's get the latest now from Bloomberg's Irv Chapman in Washington.
Members of both parties took turns listing the provisions of the bill. Majority Leader Steny Hoyer.
This legislation represents a bipartisan resolve to meet the coronavirus challenge head on. It represents a focus on families and workers with the objective of making them safer and economically supported.
Ranking Republican Kevin Brady.
Our economy has taken a hit like we've rarely seen in America's history. Congress must act aggressively and act together now to stem the economic damage.
Democrats said the House would work on additional economic measures to boost recovery. In Washington, Irv Chapman, Bloomberg Radio.
Now, Speaker Nancy Pelosi had hoped to pass this measure by voice vote, but Republican Thomas Massie of Kentucky is threatening a roll call, and that's forcing some members to return to Washington despite the health risk. President Trump weighed in on Twitter, calling Massie a third-rate grandstander who ought to be thrown out of the GOP. UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson is the first world leader to contract COVID-19. He announced that on Twitter this morning, saying he is self-isolated at his Downing Street office.
Be in no doubt that I can continue, thanks to the wizardry of modern technology, to communicate with all my top team to lead the national fight back against coronavirus.
And the BBC, I should say, is reporting that a member of the Johnson cabinet, Health Secretary Matt Hancock, has also tested positive for COVID-19. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
Vattel Shah is Senior Project Engineer at Mott MacDonald, a global engineering consultancy with more than 16,000 employees. He earned his PhD at New Jersey Institute of Technology, and as an adjunct professor, is helping NJIT students explore emerging technologies.
My focus is renewable markets, emerging technologies, the idea of floating cities. What are we doing to develop that? What will happen to the city on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials, so taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
It's Tune In Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
Well, there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on Sports to be part of the discussion on Tune In.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Bloomberg's ever-expanding technology, data, news, and media services foster innovation, empower clients, and offer nearly limitless opportunities for career growth. Visit Bloomberg.com/careers today to view our current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is Bloomberg.com/careers.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Okay, kids, Dad's gonna teach you how to dance. First, spread your feet apart. Then, pump your knee, nod your head, shake your hips, and bite your lip ever so slightly. Now, with one hand in the air, point at people with the other hand. I call that the rock star.
Dance like a dad. It's a great way to make a moment with your kids.
Now, make a face like it just smells something bad.
Visit fatherhood.gov. Brought to you by the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services and the Ad Council.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, President of SEI's Investment Manager Services. currencies. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seizechange.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And good morning from Bloomberg World Headquarters. I'm Charlie Pellet with a look at some of the top stories we have got. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. The fastest U.S. stock rally in 9 decades ground to a halt this morning as volatility continued to grip financial markets roiled by the coronavirus pandemic. S&P 500 index down 3.7%, giving back about a fifth of its 18% surge over the past 3 days. S&P down 97 again, a drop right now of 3.7%. The Dow is down 930 points. That's a decline of 4.1%, while NASDAQ is down 287 points, a drop of 3.6%. 10-year up 1 3/32. The yield now 0.73%. Gold down 7.10, 16.20 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 6.2%, 21.20 a barrel on WTI. Recapping stock market sell-off on this Friday. What a week it has been with the S&P down 95 points now, a drop of 3.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. Well, we started off the week with unprecedented movement by the Federal Reserve looking to loosen up financial markets, and now we are awaiting the signing of a $2 trillion fiscal stimulus plan coming out of Congress. Is that enough for markets, at least in the near term? To answer that, we welcome our good friend Alicia Levine, Chief Strategist at BNY Mellon. Alicia, thanks so much for joining us. Just give us your thoughts as to kind of what this week has been across the markets.
Well, I guess I can say it's been a lifetime. And thanks again for having me during these times. Look, I think the first thing that we have to talk about is the kind of wild market moves and the volatility that is embedded in these market moves. I fear that this will make the future generations of investors cautious about investing in the market, because when you have up 10% and down 10% in 1 week, it doesn't feel like investing. It feels like Las Vegas, and that concerns me, that these kind of wild swings. To get to your question about whether this is enough, whether the stimulus is enough for markets, I think it's enough for now. But ultimately, the question we have to ask, particularly on the fiscal side, so it's not quite a stimulus, but it's really about relief, right? How long is this relief going to be good for? How much does $2 trillion buy us? And it looks like it's going to buy us about 8 weeks, right? So if you shut the economy down more or less for 8 weeks, this $2 trillion should be enough. The issue is that, if you model out the trajectory of the virus, which you're forced to do because the only way to get the economic impact is to get a sense of what the trajectory of the curve is, you're probably going to go out further than 8 weeks.
So let's unpack some of what you're saying. We're in Las Vegas. The Fed is spending $2 trillion. The U.S. government is spending $2 trillion to bail us out for 8 weeks, which seems like an insignificant amount of time given the sort of tenure this is expected to drag on for. Where do you hide? Because this doesn't sound like a time of conviction particularly.
Right. Look, I think this is a treacherous market. I mean, look, did it feel great to go up 20% from the lows that were set Monday afternoon? Yes, but it's also not unknown to have bear market rallies that look like what the last 3 days looked like. I do think that the Fed action and that the congressional action will put a bit of a floor, a target area here under the market. I think that works. When you get stimulus like this, your cyclical areas tend to outperform the safer areas. So your discretionary will outperform the staples over time. I'm not talking about day here, day there. I'm talking about over the next 6 to 12 months. Your cyclicals as on a relative basis, will outperform the more safety areas of utilities and staples and that kind of thing.
So, Alicia, how important is it for this to be a global coordinated effort? We're seeing some real big movement here by the U.S. We've seen some movement from the Europeans as well. How important is it to really be coordinated, or is this just every person for him or herself?
Look, I think central banks globally are coordinated here, and we've all been focused so much on the U.S., but it is true that there's going to be some fiscal spend in Europe as well. Even Germany, which we've all been waiting for, waiting for Godot. So there is a coordinated effort here. What I fear is on the medical side. I fear there's a patchwork of when the lockdowns are going to be lifted. And as you know, you can seed areas from new areas with people who are infected if there's a patchwork lifting of lockdowns with people traveling. I mean, this thing is so contagious. And so the medical response needs to be coordinated. The economy is going to piggyback on the curve of the infection rate. And to get to that, you have to have a global medical response.
Alicia, I'm really struck by this theme that we continue to feel with escalating alarm, especially as we heard from Fed officials earlier this morning with Michael McKee of Bloomberg, of flying blind, of this feeling that economists have no way of projecting the outcome here. This is unprecedented. We don't know the ripple out effects. We don't know the virology. We don't know so much. Do we even have a sense of the range of outcomes? I mean, whether it's depression or a V-shaped recovery, I mean, are those sort of the parameters here in terms of the wide range of outcomes we could be looking at?
Yeah, I think that the L, the U, the V, and the W are probably still good. Well, it's the alphabet.
It's comical. I mean,
it's comical, but it's true. And ultimately, this started with science. It will end with science because either there will be a treatment. There are 89 drugs in the clinic right now, and some of them are looking very promising, or it will end with a vaccine. So it's going to end at some point with science the way it started. However, I think we can say that there's enough stimulus being thrown at this that we should get some sort of recovery. Odds are either it's a V or it's a U, but it is a recovery. And is that in 12 months? Most likely, yes. Odds on, yes. So, I think we can say that. What happens in between really is quite unknown, and you really have to test where, how long your time horizon is for investing. When the market's down 35% and you have a 10-year time horizon, it's a good time to get in. If you're looking for a trade, that feels more precarious.
And exactly, Alicia. That's kind of what I'm thinking. So given what we've seen in the market, again, that 32% top to bottom, and then we've had this 20-some-odd% increase here, is this just kind of going to be a little bit of a trading choppy market until we do get a better view on the virology and the path of the virus?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think that I don't see how this is not a choppy market because we're still dealing with so much unknown information. I mean, we keep a list of macro data. Macro data is coming in great for the month of February. That's right. This all started 2 or 3 weeks ago. So there's a lot of unknown. You're going to get chopped. It's going to get exacerbated by the bots, by the algorithmic trading. As we saw yesterday, that last hour of trade, either to the upside or to the downside. And investing here means accepting those things. Now, this is about price discovery based on certain outcomes, and therefore CHOP is the name of the game. Once you accept that and you invest, you got to close your eyes a little bit because you've accepted it walking in, right? Those are the parameters you have to accept to walk in here.
Alicia Levine, thank you so much for being with us. We always appreciate your insights.
Chop.
And it's choppy. If you want to chop, here's your moment. Alicia Levine is Chief Strategist at BNY Mellon, joining us on the phone. Honestly, you have to have your eyes closed. The known unknowns, the unknown unknowns. I mean, honestly, if you like certainty and predictability, go take a nap for the next year.
Yeah, exactly.
I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah, I think Alicia was spot on saying until we really do get visibility on the curve, if you will, it's chop. And, so maybe you trade in those chops, but that's about it.
Yeah, right now the chop is down. We're looking at the S&P. It's down 3.4%. The Dow, a 3.9% decline after its biggest rally since 1933. I'm Lisa Abramovich with Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg Markets.
The happy family of three were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Listen to Raj go. Polyrhythm, paradiddle. A drum solo so epic, he nearly forgot his mom's birthday back in Delhi. Good thing Raj has Western Union on his phone and can send money quickly online. Download the app today. This service is provided by Western Union. FX gains apply. It's TuneIn Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now, it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
But there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney.
Are we on the brink of a more serious downturn?
I've always thought of the municipal bond market as a little bit of a safe haven.
Banks are going to have to start paying their depositors more.
Are we still in that mode where we're buying the dips?
Breaking market news and insight from Bloomberg experts.
Cash, if you're looking at Treasury bills, provides a higher return than stocks and bonds here in the U.S.
If your consumer is a woman, you're more likely to be a growth company.
Longer-term interest rates can go down, even with short-term interest rates still going up a little bit.
This is Bloomberg Markets with Lisa Abramowitz and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Coming up, a number of governors will have their daily updates on the coronavirus. We will bring them to you as they break. Plus, we're also going to take a look at what the medical community is doing as it relates to the coronavirus. But first, let's go to Charlie Pellet for Bloomberg Business Flash. Charlie, what do you have for us?
Thank you very much, Paul Sweeney. We've got lower markets across the board here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all slumping by 3.2% or worse. S&P is down 3.2%, dropping 84 points right now at 25.45. The Dow lower by 839 points, down 3.7%, while NASDAQ has fallen 252 points, a drop now of 3.2%. Sharp contrast to yesterday's rally. The 10-year up 1 3/32 with a yield of 0.73%. Gold is down 0.6%, 16.22 the ounce, and West Texas Intermediate crude oil plunging 5.1%, now at 21.43 a barrel. Brent 24.78 barrel of Brent down now by 5.9%. So the fastest stock rally in 9 decades grounding to a halt this Friday after a turbulent week. Volatility continues to grip financial markets roiled by the coronavirus pandemic. Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic, speaking in an interview broadcast on Bloomberg Radio and Television, said while the U.S. economy will contract in the second quarter, it should start to rebound at some point in the third quarter, and the recovery could be strong. In that conversation with our Michael McKee this morning, he also talked about lending to small businesses.
The way the program is conceived conceptually is to provide them with a bridge that allows them to really stay in business, keep their employees on board, and get us to the other side of the crisis.
Southwest Airlines says it's losing, quote, big money on every flight, raising the risk of worker furloughs in the longer term despite billions of dollars in immediate aid from the U.S. government. Southwest Airlines shares right now down by 7%. Quickly checking some of the other airline stocks today. Delta down 5.4%. American Airlines Group down 7%. JetBlue is lower by 8.2%. Recapping equities lower across the board. Gold is down 0.7%, $16.20 the ounce. S&P lower by 86, down 3.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by Build America Mutual. Is your municipal bond investment safe even if the next recession reduces public revenues? Yes. AA guaranteed BAM municipal bond insurance protects against everything that causes a default. Visit buildamerica.com. Right now, let's get a check of small and mid-cap shares, which have been, outperformed for a day, which was great for them. And now we are in a day where they are down. And Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, joining us to talk about it. Down, it looks like more than the broader index is picking up the trend where it left off.
Indeed, Lisa. The Russell 2000 index down 3.8% as we speak. The S&P 500 down about 3.25%. So the Russell's now lower by about 32% for the quarter. So, the trend is definitely reasserting itself here. Biggest drop in the Russell belongs to Roadrunner Transportation Systems, whose ticker is RRTS. The trucking company has fallen 33.5%. Roadrunner said it will give up a New York Stock Exchange listing and deregister its shares with U.S. regulators. Regional Management, ticker RM, has declined 18%. The consumer finance company replaced CEO Peter Nitzer with Chief Financial Officer Robert Beck, effective immediately. And Redfin, ticker RDFN, has lost 15%. CEO Glenn Kelman said he's going without a salary from the online real estate broker for the rest of the year. Now, one of the Russell's biggest gains belongs to Calithera Biosciences, ticker CALA. The drug developer has gained 8.5% after receiving a buy rating and new coverage at Jefferies. And TK, that's TEEKAY, the ticker is just TK, the two letters, has risen 5.8%. UL tanker owner agreed to provide floating storage of crude for a field off the Shetland Islands. TK will receive about $67 million up front in the deal, which may last as long as 10 years.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson, thanks so much for that. We appreciate it. The real question, I think, for a lot of people here as they think about the virus is when will the U.S. flatten the curve? Max Neeson, Bloomberg Opinion healthcare columnist, joins us to chat about the coronavirus. So, Max, kind of give us a sense of kind of where we are in testing, in new cases. It seems like that's kind of where the discussion needs to start.
Yeah, absolutely. So there have been substantial steps forward in terms of the capability and the breadth of testing in the United States. Still not at the point that we'd like to be where there isn't a backlog, where there's kind of evenly distributed capabilities. So, these places that are starting to become greater areas of concern, Georgia, New Orleans, Detroit, Philadelphia, not all of them have the sort of capabilities you see in New York, even though we're getting more signs that those are places that are going to have outbreaks of some significance. So still progress that needs to be made. And in terms of kind of the flattening of the curve, not a tremendous amount of evidence of that yet. Some slowdown or at least a arrested rate of growth in Washington. But other than that, you have lots of places where we're still seeing acceleration and, where there weren't quite as stringent or early social distancing measures put in place. So still in the early stages, unfortunately.
Max, we were speaking with Joe Nocera of Bloomberg Opinion earlier today, and he was talking about the test to see if there are antibodies, to see whether you've already had it and now are immune to it so that we could get certain people back to work. What's the progress there? I mean, one of the big fear points for me, I just have to say, I don't know if I have it, right? Like, you don't know if you have it. You don't know who you could be exposing yourself to, which is a reason why it's so important that everybody stay home. So when can we find out?
So these are our serological antibody tests. They already exist. They're available, not broadly deployed, because they have to be validated. And you're also hoping, you saw in the Trump administration press briefing last night, they'd really like to see the kind of rapid version of that, where it just takes a drop of blood. So there's definitely, a great appetite and some progress towards that. That will be very, very useful. Both, if people know that they had it without symptoms, it takes a lot of anxiety away. You're not likely to run to the hospital if you have a cough or some sniffles, preventing overload. So, while it's still early for those, I'm hoping that we'll be able to see broad and quick kind of rollout of those tests. That'll go a long way.
All right, Max Thiessen, thank you so much for being with us, as always, of Bloomberg Opinion. Right now, let's head over to Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker giving a briefing on what's been going on in that state, particularly Boston, which is seeing an escalating number of cases. Let's listen in.
All travelers arriving to the Commonwealth are instructed to self-quarantine for 14 days. To help deliver this message, travelers entering Massachusetts will be given information flyers instructing them of the 14-day quarantine at our major transportation hubs, including Logan Airport, South Station, and Worcester Airport. Drivers will also see these flyers in rest stops on the turnpike and on roadside message boards that will display the message instructing travelers to quarantine. We're taking extraordinary steps here to keep our residents safe, including asking folks to stay home and closing non-essential businesses. Every which decision comes with a certain amount of pain, frustration, and disruption for the people of the Commonwealth. At the same time we're asking so much of our residents, we should also be thinking about the potential impact of travelers visiting Massachusetts from other places. As I said, we're instructing all visitors arriving in Massachusetts to comply with this request for the sake of protecting the most vulnerable among us all, our parents, grandparents, and those with underlying health conditions. Further, we're asking that folks considering travel to Massachusetts, for whatever reason, do not travel to our communities, especially if you have symptoms. Healthcare workers, public health workers, public safety workers, and transportation workers are obviously exempt from this requirement. I know I mentioned the New York City area earlier when discussing the need for travelers to self-quarantine, but I want to make clear Governors Cuomo in New York, Murphy in New Jersey, and Lamont in Connecticut are also doing everything they can to slow the spread of the virus. Mayors, public health officials, doctors, nurses, and armies of frontline medical workers everywhere are doing extraordinary work, and they all have said the same thing: stay home, stop the spread. Before I introduce a rather exciting announcement, I want to take a minute to reiterate the importance of telemedicine as we deal with this outbreak. Our administration has made telehealth available to everyone to help you talk to your doctors and other clinicians and to get medical attention without leaving your house. With a phone call or a video chat, if someone's showing symptoms of COVID-19, they can talk to a provider and not be in close contact with their doctor or the hospital staff. This is extraordinarily important in our fight against COVID-19. Telehealth not only keeps patients safe, but it keeps providers safe too. We ordered telemedicine to be fully covered by health insurance for all services, and I urge everybody to take full advantage of it and not go in person to a medical facility if you have the alternative of a phone call or a video chat. Along these lines, today we're launching a new partnership to make available an online resource for residents to receive medical guidance from the safety of their home. Bowie Health's online health assistance tool. The online tool is available at bowie.com/mass to provide medical advice remotely. I want to make clear It is not to be used in place of emergency medical care. Instead, it's a tool that's been collecting data and providing guidance to people for many, many months, and everyone can use it to get much more information about their health, which, as we know, everyone is thinking about these days. Buoy Health's tool is free for Massachusetts residents. First, users will be asked a series of questions to complete a risk assessment interview. When a user screens positive for COVID-19 symptoms or risk factors, they'll be directed to the most appropriate resources based on their answers. If a user indicates they're experiencing symptoms or risk factors that are closely associated with those of COVID-19, they'll be directed to other resources. Those resources include a portal linked up with their health insurance provider to talk over the phone or through video chat with a healthcare provider right away. Again, this is not to be used in the place of emergency medical care. Instead, it's a tool everyone can use to get more information about their health and get connected quickly to the people they need to talk to get the best guidance and advice about what to do next. We know there's an avalanche of information out there, some of which is great, some of which is good, and some of which is neither. And it's our hope that this partnership will answer some of the questions we are all asking ourselves, in some cases, every day. Buoy Health's online health tool offers a 24/7 front door for residents to offer their symptoms and get guidance on next steps. We have with us today Dr. Andrew Lay, who will go into more details on this in just a few minutes. He's the CEO and co-founder of Buoy Health, which, by the way, is also a Massachusetts-based company. Our administration has taken several steps to cut red tape and create avenues for our healthcare facilities to assign more doctors, nurses, and PAs, physician assistants, to the fight against COVID-19. So far, we've made it simple for our medical professionals to work at different hospitals and in different specialties. We've made it possible to bring more manpower over state lines into Massachusetts and to bring back doctors and nurses in good standing who may have retired. Today, we're working to bring more qualified professionals to the front lines as we fight COVID-19. The Board of Registration of Medicine is giving medical school graduates who match a specific criteria an emergency 90-day limited license to practice medicine to help in the fight against COVID-19. This will be granted for an intern, resident, or fellow at a Massachusetts healthcare facility or training program that's been approved by the board. To qualify for this license, residents can fill out an application which will be submitted by the program or facility. If approved, the resident will get a license to be able to start supporting our healthcare institutions. And I want to thank Secretary Sutters and DPH Commissioner Monica Burrell for their work to get this up and running. I think we all know that the COVID-19 outbreak has caused a lot of uncertainty for workers and businesses, especially here in the Commonwealth and across the country. And we anticipate that there will be many taxpayers who struggle to meet their tax filing and payment obligations in light of the economic impact of the virus. Last week, the federal government announced that they were extending the federal tax filing and payment deadline to July 15. Over the past several days, we've worked closely with our colleagues in the legislature to develop a plan to align the state income tax deadline with the federal deadline. In partnership with House Speaker Bob DeLeo and Senate President Karen Spilka, we're filing legislation today to extend the 2019 state individual tax filing and payment deadline from April 15th to July 15th. The income tax relief would be automatic, and taxpayers would not need to file any additional forms to qualify. A state extension would provide flexibility to taxpayers and would afford them additional time to file their returns in a way that protects the Commonwealth's strong fiscal footing. This change will provide the Commonwealth's taxpayers with significant relief at this very uncertain time. And I'm very thankful to the efforts of A&F Secretary Mike Heffernan and House and Senate leaders who worked together to come to this agreement, and we look forward to working with the legislature to get this bill enacted. Once again, on behalf of Lieutenant Governor Karen Polito and myself and our entire administration, I want to thank those of you who are staying at home in order to help us stop the spread of the virus. I know there's been a lot of change, a ton of uncertainty, and a lot to adapt to. And these are clearly difficult times, in times in which disruption is becoming more the norm. But the people of Massachusetts have overcome trying times in the past, and I'm confident that we will again, together. I urge everyone to subscribe to the Commonwealth's text alert system by texting COVID-MA to 888-777 and continue to get your news from trusted sources like local news, newspapers, and official channels like mass.gov/COVID-19. At this point, I'd like to turn it over to Dr. Lay and let him talk a little bit about Bowie's technology and capability to assist Massachusetts residents.
We've been listening to Massachusetts Governor Charlie Baker talking about ways to try to contain some of the spread of the coronavirus in the Massachusetts region, particularly as Boston sees an escalating number of cases. A growing concern about the numbers, a focus more on the virology of it. Right now we're looking at markets that are pairing some of the earlier losses. The Dow down 2.7%, the S&P 2.3%, the NASDAQ down 2.4%. Bloomberg Markets is brought to you by the New Jersey Institute of Technology, transforming computing professionals into data scientists to meet demand in this fast-growing field. More at njit.edu/Jersey City. Paul.
Lisa, thank you so much. Really appreciate that. So the market's kind of paring back the losses. So, it's interesting, Lisa, we can see here, that's more and more states, kind of more and more regions of the country really going on to this lockdown mode that New York has been in for some time.
Yeah, I mean, the host of local governments that are taking charge is really notable, and it raises some questions about whether the distribution of goods will be commensurate with the severity of the virus in different places. We know that Washington, D.C., for example, has been protesting that it's not being treated as a state. And as a result, it is not getting, I believe it's being cut out of $700 million of aid that it otherwise would be able to use. Meanwhile, there's a question about the number of respirators needed, with Governor Andrew Cuomo of New York saying that 30,000 additional respirators are needed in New York in order to meet the expected groundswell of patients. And we have definitely a question coming out of President Trump of whether he recognizes that or whether he agrees and is going to fulfill that particular assessment, Paul.
Yeah, it's interesting. And President Trump continues to tweet, and this time against General Motors. As usual with this General Motors, things just never seem to work out. This is per President Trump. They said, they being General Motors, they were going to give us 40,000 much-needed ventilators, quote, very quickly. Now they're saying it will only be 6,000 in late April, and they want top dollars. Always a mess with Mary B. Invoke P. So I'm not really sure what that's about, but apparently President Trump is not happy with kind of what's going on right now. Focus on Munis is brought to you by Build America Mutual. Will you get paid quick if an earthquake puts your municipal bond investment on shaky ground? Yes, double A guaranteed. BAM, municipal bond insurance. Protect against everything that causes a default. Visit buildamerica.com. Right now, let's talk about the municipal bond market. We have Eric Kazansky, Senior U.S. Municipal Strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. Eric, how has the muni market been dealing with the volatility, the lack of liquidity we've seen in certain markets?
Hey, good morning. We've been dealing quite fine, I would say. If you look at where AAA rates for munis are, we did a complete round trip, right? We backed up 200 basis points, rallied back 200 basis points approximately. So in our morning note this morning, we said it's almost as if the men in black came to visit the muni market and just erased our memories of the last 2 weeks. I think the Fed coming in and getting involved first in the front end of the curve, and now through the Senate bill being able to buy munis with really no limit on duration, I think that's really put a sure footing under the market. So you see a lot of people sort of trying to position themselves to get in front of that trade.
I'm trying to understand the incredible outflows that we've seen from muni debt over the past few weeks, just mounting record-breaking back-to-back weeks. Why?
Mm-hmm. I think you saw a lot of outflows in a lot of fixed income asset classes. It wasn't just munis. I think that on a percentage basis, it just looked like a lot. And if you think about it, over 60 weeks, we had $90 billion come into the space. Over 2 weeks, we lost $25 billion. So we're really back to where we were in November from a flow standpoint. But if you look at the daily flow numbers, yesterday was only an outflow of $956 million. So I wouldn't be surprised to see inflows at some point next week, just sort of given the change in sentiment. But I think you had a general rush to cash for a lot of people, just seeking safety and just given the general uncertainty of the economy and where things are going to be going from how the virus is going to play out. I think for munis in particular, you probably had a little bit of uncertainty from a credit aspect. And, I'm thinking that, we'll probably see a little bit of repricing from a credit perspective into the market in the coming months.
Eric, where are some of the areas of pain in the municipal bond market? I'm thinking airports and some other issuers that are, pretty travel-related, consumer-related.
Yep, those are the low-hanging fruit, just sort of topically addressing, where you could draw dotted lines from the virus to areas in the municipal space. But I really think you could draw a line to anything. You have senior living, you have toll roads, you have higher education, you have healthcare, you have state and local governments. And I think the federal government was very in tune with how much of a strain this is going to put on state and local governments by addressing that as part of the Senate bill. Because if you think about it, they not only have a revenue shock, they have an expense shock at the same time, and that's never a good thing.
I'm wondering if the $2 trillion stimulus plan, how much you think that will stave off the losses, since there is a considerable amount to go to state and local governments?
Not a lot on face value, right? So if you just think about direct injection into the states, you're talking about a minimum of $1.25 billion for each state. If you look, let's take California, for example, we put out a report this week and just looked at, the revenues that they're dependent on. And just sales taxes alone, they're dependent on like $49 billion in sales taxes, and they're also heavily dependent on capital gains taxes. So you can see sort of the storm on the horizon for a state like that. So $1.25 billion is not going to get very far. But you also have the added problem of them pushing back tax day into another fiscal year for these municipalities. So the ability to use the $425 billion portion of the bill and lever that up through the Fed will allow them to make loans and sort of help bridge the gap for a lot of these municipalities.
So, Eric, just real quickly, what are some of the states and municipalities that we need to be on the look for? Is it some of the same old Illinois and things like that, and the New York, which is being hit hard? How do we think about that?
You could look at it a couple of different ways. One, you could look at it at how the stock market sell-off is going to impact, pension return assumptions and returns for the year. And you already have states like California and New Jersey warning that they're not going to hit their return assumptions and they're cutting back on spending. But you could also, again, look to rainy day funds as to how much support some of these states have and cushions to dip into. So not picking on California, they're actually in a better space than a lot of states. They have about $20 billion in their rainy day fund. But compare that to a state like Pennsylvania that only has $340 million, you could see sort of the disadvantage of where I live in Pennsylvania.
Eric Kazatsky, thanks so much for joining us. Eric Kazatsky is a senior U.S. municipal strategist for Bloomberg Intelligence. So, Lisa, it seems like this is just going to be, the beginning of some pain in the municipal bond market, despite some support that they will be getting with the federal stimulus plan.
Yeah, of course, the Federal Reserve is going to buy them. As honestly, there was a fantastic quote earlier this morning. City's a man saying that basically the Fed is putting a put on your entire portfolio, and that includes municipal bonds, because now they're buying that too.
Exactly right. So here we are, 73 points down on the S&P 500. That's 2.7%. Pairing some of those earlier losses, the Dow down 709 points. That's 3.14%. NASDAQ down 224 points. That's 2.9% on the NASDAQ. The Dow's at 21,830. This is Bloomberg Markets.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The fastest stock rally in 9 decades grinding to a halt. Volatility continues to grip financial markets due to the coronavirus. Economists say the U.S. is entering a sharp recession, with some projecting second quarter gross domestic product heading for its worst drop in quarterly records back to 1947. The House is in session, expected to vote on that stimulus measure. Ford and Fiat Chrysler drawing heated language from the United Auto Workers by issuing plans to restart production at U.S. plants. Ford announced several key facilities are expected to reopen on April 14th. Fiat Chrysler said its decision will depend on the state's stay-in-place orders. And with so many people working remotely because of the coronavirus, surveillance software is flying off the virtual shelves. Software maker InterGuard said companies are scrambling for tools that provide a combination of screen monitoring and productivity metrics, such as the number of emails sent. Courtney Dunhope, Bloomberg Radio.
Sweet strawberry icing. You're in Goodwill, and just past that vintage denim jacket you spot miniature donut earrings. You lean in. That's the scent of shopping success. Because at Goodwill, every item you buy funds local job training and more. So bring home those donut earrings and bring home so much good to your community. Goodwill. Bring good home. Brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
Mayday, Mayday, this is Red Dwarf. Our engines are dead and we're being sucked into a black hole. Can anyone hear me? Over?
The only thing that's over is us, Crichton. We're finished.
Guys, relax. I've got Smart Breakdown with the AA. It sends them your vehicle's fault data, so they should know what's wrong before they even get here.
I don't believe it.
What, that they'll already know what's wrong?
No, that you're actually capable of something useful.
The future of breakdown today. The AA. Drive smart. See the AA.com for details.
In the left passenger seat, we've got Dan the Widowmaker. In the right, Face Smash Steve. Oh, a solid left hook from Steve. Blocked by Dan. Dan's got him up against the ropes. Going for a signature pole driver slam. But Steve's wriggled away like a greasy snake. And Steve's got him in a chokehold. He's got him! He's got him!
Boys, pack it in back there. I'm trying to drive.
Sorry. Your mate's more likely to crash with passengers in the car. So don't drive him to distraction. Let a mate concentrate.
Listen to Raj go. Polyrhythm, paradiddle. A drum solo so epic, he nearly forgot his mum's birthday back in Delhi. Good thing Raj has Western Union on his phone and can send money quickly online. Download the app today. This service is provided by Western Union. FX gains apply.
This week at Tesco, extra large Easter eggs are 2 for £8. And we've got an extra large choice on all your favourite brands, including Cadbury's, Reese's and Galaxy. At 2 for £8, the only thing that isn't extra large is the price. Tesco. Every little helps. Available in the majority of larger stores and online. Delivery charges may apply ends 31st of March.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
A lot of people aren't aware that TuneIn lets you listen to the same terrestrial stations that you pick up on your FM AM dial, except you can hear them from anywhere. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now, it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
But there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at seic.com/seize change.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing, but not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. This breaks my heart, and it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste and gives it to families in need. To help, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Interconnect here.
Let's start with the national security implications of this.
Balance of Power with David Weston.
What could the United States do to help?
Weekdays at noon Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Markets.
Coming up on Bloomberg Markets, we're expecting to hear from New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo, the latest in the epicenter of the coronavirus in the United States. Plus, we speak with Mike Buchanan, Deputy Chief Investment Officer at Western Asset Management, on whether to buy the dip or whether this is a dead cat bounce. Right now, though, let's head over to Charlie Pellet and get the numbers. Charlie.
All right, here's what's going on. Valid question indeed. Right now, we are looking at another dip, and that's putting it mildly. S&P down 80, a drop there of 3.1%. The Dow plunging 790 points, down 3.5%. NASDAQ down 239, down 3.1%. Volatility in U.S. equity markets continues. The 10-year down 1 2/32 with a yield of 0.73%. The fastest U.S. stock rally in 9 decades, grounding to a halt this Friday as volatility continues to grip financial markets roiled by the coronavirus pandemic. Right now, we've got gold down 0.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thank you so much, Charlie. Right now, we are expecting comments from New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo, who's really taken on something of a national role, evidently speaking with President Trump on a regular basis, as the number of cases in New York State climbs beyond 25,000. We'll get a latest update on the exact number, and he is sitting down and speaking with reporters right now. Let's take a listen.
With us today, from my far right, we have Jim Malatras, who is the president of Empire College, who I've worked with for many years and has been very helpful here on this mission. Our Commissioner of Health, Dr. Howard Zucker. To my left is General Patrick Murphy, who I'll say more about to say in a moment. And to his left is General Raymond Shields. Thank you for being here today. This is an amazing accomplishment. It's transformative. In just 1 week, the Javits Center looks entirely different. And this is a place that's literally going to save lives. Let me go through some facts, if I can, on a daily update of where we are. And then I want to make some comments to all the women and men who were assembled and did such a great job on this facility. The increase in the number of cases continues. We still see that trajectory going up. Those are the dates from March 3rd to March 25th. Strategy, plan of action all along. Step 1, flatten the curve. Step 2, increase hospital capacity. Flatten the curve meaning if you do it as well as you can do it, hopefully there is no high point of the curve. There is no apex. It's a flatter, lower curve. Why? So the hospital capacity can keep up with it. That's what this is all about, not overwhelming the hospital capacity, and at the same time increasing the hospital capacity that we have. So if it does exceed those numbers, which it will in most probability, that we have the additional capacity to deal with it. Flattening the curve, these are all sorts of measures that we put in place, barring non-essential workers, social distancing, closing bars, closing restaurants, all the things I did that made people very happy with me. But the way you make a decision is the benefit and the burden, right? The risk and the reward. We are battling a deadly virus. Is there an intrusion on daily life? Yes. Is there an intrusion on movement? Yes. Is there an intrusion on the economy? Yes. But what's on the other side of the scale is literally saving lives, and that's not rhetorical. That's not drama. That's fact. Public education is very important. It's important to all of us. On the other side of the balance beam is public health. I decided to close the public schools because I believed it was safer to close the schools and reduce the spread. We did that on March 18th. We said we would do it for 2 weeks, and then we would reassess the situation at the end of 2 weeks. 2 weeks ends on April 1. We also said that we would waive what's called the 180-day requirement that every school has to teach for 180 days. We would waive that, but that we would close the schools until April 1, and then we would reassess. Also, we said that every school district, before it closes, had to come up with plans to continue functions that they were doing, because school districts do more than just educate. They provide child care for essential workers. They provide schools. They provide meals in the schools. So everything that they were doing, they had to come up with a plan to mitigate the consequence of their closing, including distance learning for their students. I have to reassess because April 1 is just in a couple of days, and I believe the schools should remain closed. I don't do this joyfully, but I think when you look at where we are and you look at the number of cases still increasing, it only makes sense to keep the schools closed. They have to continue the programs they're doing. They have to continue the child care, continue the meals, continue the distance learning programs. I'll continue the waiver on what's called the 180-day mandate that they have to be in operation. But we're going to close the schools for another 2 weeks, and then we'll reassess at that point, and that is statewide. At the same time, we're working to increase hospital capacity. What is the possible apex of the curve? It changes a little bit depending on the data day to day, but now we're looking at about 21 days for a possible apex. So we want to do everything we can to be ready for that increased capacity that could hit us in 21 days and ramp up the hospital capacity. We are doing everything we can. We're doing things that have never been done before. We're doing things that when we put them on the table, people thought they were impossible. But we are now doing the impossible, as you know well here with what you did over the past week. All hospitals have to increase their capacity by 50%. We're asking hospitals to try to increase their capacity 100%. because we need that many beds. We're also looking at converting dorms. We're looking at converting hotels. We've been gathering equipment from everywhere we can, PPE equipment. Most important piece of equipment for us are ventilators. And we're shopping literally around the globe to put it all in place. We're creating a stockpile of this equipment so that when and if the apex hits, we can deploy equipment from the stockpile to whatever region of the state or whatever hospital needs it. So we collect it, we hold it, as a hospital needs it, a region needs it, then we deploy it. The N95 masks, surgical masks, examination gloves, protective gowns, coveralls, and most importantly, the ventilators. Why ventilators? Because this is a respiratory illness. People need ventilators who come in for acute care, and the people are on ventilators much longer than most patients are on ventilators. Most people are on a ventilator for 2, 3, 4 days. These COVID patients can come in and need a ventilator for up to 20 days. So you see why that need for ventilators is so important. And again, All of this is to make sure we're ready for that apex when the entire system is stressed and under pressure. And that's what we're working on. For the hospital capacity at the quote-unquote apex, we need 140,000 beds. We have 53,000 beds. That's why we're scrambling, and that's why we're asking you to do as much work as you're doing. We need 40,000 ICU beds. The ICU beds are the intensive care unit beds. They have ventilators. We have, when we started, 3,000 ICU beds with 3,000 ventilators. So you see how monumental the task, how monumental the mountain that we have to climb. Of the 140,000, how do we get to the 140,000? As I said, all hospitals increased by 50%. Some hospitals will increase 100%. They're going to get the Gold Star Hospital Award. I don't know exactly what that means, but we'll figure it out later. FEMA and the Army Corps and the National Guard have been working to put up these emergency hospitals. So far, we have planned for 4. The one we're in today at the Javits Center, one in Westchester County Center, one at Stony Brook, and one at Old Westbury. That would be 4,000 additional units. They are all underway as we speak. Not as far along as your good work at Javits, but they are on their way. Again, with all of these beds, we still have a shortfall. So we're going to go to Plan B. What's Plan B? We're going to seek to build another 4 temporary emergency hospitals, which would get us another 4,000 beds. And we just have been scouting sites for a few days. We have settled on a few sites working with the Army Corps of Engineers. And I'm going to ask the President today if he will authorize another 4 temporary hospitals for us. I want to have one in every borough. I want to have one for the Bronx, Queens, Manhattan, Staten Island, Brooklyn, one for Nassau, one for Suffolk, one for Westchester. So everybody knows downstate, which is where the essence of the density is right now, that everyone equally is being helped and is being protected. We looked at a site in the Bronx at the New York Expo Center. It's a 90,000 square foot site. Seeing what we did here, we think it would work very well. And again, the Army Corps of Engineers has worked with us and looked at all these sites and thinks that these sites work. One in Queens at the Aqueduct Racetrack site, 100,000 square feet there. One in Brooklyn, what's called the Brooklyn Cruise Terminal. It's owned by the Port Authority, but it's a wide open space. We can convert it very easily, 182,000 square feet. And in Staten Island, the College of Staten Island, which is a CUNY facility, 77,000 square feet. Again, inside can be converted. It has power. It has climate control, etc. We would do the same thing that we've done here successfully, so we know it works, we know it's feasible. Building the interior space, we have exterior space that we could put up a temporary tent for supplies, equipment, etc. That would give us coverage all across the downstate area with proximate facilities to every location downstate, and frankly is the best plan that we can put together and execute in this timeline. We also have, beyond the next phase of temporary hospitals, if the White House grants that request, we have the Navy ship Comfort coming up that is going to be on its way soon. It's going to be right here in New York Harbor. It is a massive facility in and of itself, 1,000 beds, 1,200 medical personnel, 12 operating rooms. It has a pharmacy, it has a laboratory, and it should be here on Monday. So that will also help us in this quest. And then we're looking at dormitories and converting dormitories downstate. We're looking at City College dormitories, Queens College. We have the dormitories because the colleges are closed and the students have left, so we actually have dormitories that we can convert. We're also looking at hotels and nursing homes. We're looking at the Marriott Brooklyn Bridge Hotel and a nursing home called Brooklyn Center. So as you can see, we're looking far and wide, very creative, aggressive, and finding all the space that we can possibly find and converting it to be ready in case we have that overflow capacity. We also have it planned out so that this will be coming online before we think the apex hits. And at the same time, we're trying to flatten the curve to delay and soften that apex, right? Those are the two strategies. Slow the spread, flatten the curve. In the meantime, increase the hospital capacity so whatever that surge is that you have, you actually have the capacity to deal with it. And right now we have a plan where over the next 3 or 4 weeks, which is the same timeline as the apex possibly coming, we're going to have the capacity as high as we can possibly get the capacity. In terms of where we are today, because we're tracking the numbers, we want to see what's happening. And are we getting closer to the apex? Are we succeeding in flattening the curve? We've been testing. We test more in this state than any state in the United States. We test more per capita than China or South Korea. So we ramped up very quickly on the testing. New tests, 16,000. Total tested, 138,000. Number of positive cases, total cases 44,000, new cases 7,377. It continues to spread all across the state as it continues to spread all across the country. The number of deaths, we're up to 519 in New York. That's up from 385. That is going to continue to go up. And that is the worst news that I could possibly tell the people of the state of New York. The reason why the number is going up is because some people came into the hospital 20 days, 25 days ago and have been on a ventilator for that long a period of time. The longer you are on a ventilator, the less likely you're going to come off that ventilator. And that's not just true with this virus. That's true with every illness. When somebody's on that ventilator for a prolonged period of time, the outcome is usually not good. So we're seeing a significant increase in deaths because the length of time people are on the ventilator is increasing, and the more it increases, the higher the level of deaths will increase. And again, we expect that to continue to increase. It's bad news. It's tragic news. It's the worst news. But it is not unexpected news either. If you talk to any healthcare professional, they'll tell you about, if you're talking about a loved one, if they're not off that ventilator in a relatively short period of time, it's not a good sign. Overall, 44,000 people have tested positive, 6,000 currently hospitalized, 1,500 in intensive care units. That's up 290. Those are the people who need the ventilators. 2,000 patients have been discharged. That's up 528. So you have people coming into the hospital, getting treatment, and leaving the hospital. Most people who get the virus will never even go into the hospital in the first place, right? So we have to keep this in focus. 80% of the people who get the virus will what they call self-resolve. You'll feel ill. Maybe you won't feel that ill. You'll think you have the flu, and you self-resolve. 80% of the people. 20% who will go into a hospital. Some of them will get short-term treatment, and then they go home. A very small percent, and they tend to be older people, more vulnerable people, people with an underlying illness. This respiratory illness compounds the problem they have. They had a compromised immune system. They were fighting emphysema. They were battling cancer. And on top of that, they now get pneumonia, which is what this coronavirus is. That's the population that is most vulnerable. They then go on to a ventilator. Some percentage get off quickly. Some percentage don't get off. The longer they're on, the higher the mortality rate. New York is still by far the most affected state, both in terms of number of cases and in terms of number of deaths. Why? Because we welcome people here from all over the globe. So travelers came here, people from China came here, people from Korea came here, people who were traveling around the country and stopped in China and stopped in South Korea and stopped in Italy came here. And because we are a very dense environment. You know, social distancing, stay 6 feet away, that's hard in New York City, right? Walk down the sidewalk and tell me that you can stay 6 feet away from someone. We're so dense, we're so together, which is what makes us special, gives us that New York energy, gives us that New York mojo. It also, that density becomes the enemy in a situation like this. This is the total number of people who have been hospitalized, and we've been watching these numbers every day. We are now compiling the numbers, I think, in what's a smarter way. Before, we were getting individual patient data. Every hospital had to tell us about each individual patient, what their address was, where they came from, what the underlying illness was, and they had to put all that information together, which was very labor intensive. So it was erratic the way the information would come in. Sometimes the hospital was just too busy to put all that information together, so they didn't send it in until the next day or the day after. This is a more uniform set of data. This is all the number of people in that the entire number of people in that hospital who have the COVID virus, without getting into all the specifics of individual names and individual circumstances. So it's easier for them to get us this data. And you see again the steady incline in the number. But, and this is good news, early on, you see that the number was doubling every 2.5 days. Then it was doubling every 3 days. Now it's doubling about every 4 days. It's still doubling, and that's still bad news because it still means you're moving up towards an apex, right? Because that number still goes up. But there is good news in that the rate of the increase is slowing. So they're two separate facts. The rate of the increase is slowing, but the number of cases are still going up. All right? And those 2 points are consistent. And that's what we're seeing. We want to see the rate slowing. And then we want to see the number of actual cases coming down or flattening. That's the flattening of the curve. But this is where we are today. Again, to keep it all in perspective, people don't know what to make of the coronavirus, what's going to happen. Johns Hopkins has studied every coronavirus since China. 542,000 cases they've studied. Of all those cases, there have been 24,000 deaths. That's a lot of deaths, yes. But compared to 542,000 cases, it gives you a sense of the lethality of this disease. And if you look at the 24,000, they're going to be overwhelmingly older people, vulnerable people, people with underlying illnesses, etc. The amount of support that we have gotten from New Yorkers in the midst of this crisis is just extraordinary. I am a born and bred New Yorker. If you can't tell my Queens accent, I can tell your Bronx accent and your Brooklyn accent and your Manhattan accent and your Staten Island accent. But New Yorkers never cease to amaze me, how big their heart is. You know, they talk about how New Yorkers are tough. Yeah, you know, it's tough to live in a place like this. You have to be tough. But as tough as we are is as loving as we are, and is as big as our heart is. And when someone needs something, there's no place I'd rather be than New York. And the number of people who are volunteering, who are coming forward, we put out a call for additional medical personnel because we have to staff all these additional beds. We put out a call, 62,000 volunteers. The number went up 10,000 in one day. How beautiful is that? These are people who are retired, who did their duty, who could just sit at home, but they are coming forward. Same thing, we asked for mental health professionals who could provide mental health services electronically, over the telephone, through Skype, etc. Many people are dealing with mental health issues. This is a stressful, taxing situation on everyone. And isolation at home. You are home, you're home alone, day after day after day. That is a stressful situation. You don't know what's going on, you're afraid to go out, you're isolated with your family. That's a stressful situation. Not that we don't love to be with our family, we all do. But that can create stress. And there's no place to go, there's no one to talk to about that. So this mental health service over the telephone is very, very important. I want to speak to the most important people in the room for a moment, who are the people who are responsible for this great construction behind me. First, I'd like to introduce General Patrick Murphy, who's to my left. General Murphy is tested, smart, and he is tested tough. I've been with the General for 9 years. I've seen him in hurricanes and Superstorm Sandy and floods and everything Mother Nature could throw at us. I've seen him in attempted terrorist attacks. There is no one better. He leads from the front. He knows what he's doing. And you could not have a better commander at this time than General Patrick Murphy, and I want you to know that. I want to congratulate the Army Corps of Engineers for what they did here. I used to be in the federal government. I worked with the Army Corps of Engineers all across the country. I worked with them on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation, building housing. And one of the officers of the Army Corps of Engineers is still in service and reminded me of that. They are top shelf, and what they did here is top shelf. I want to thank the Javits staff, which has really stepped up, and I want to thank our National Guard. Because you are the best of us. You are the best of us. And whenever we call on you, you are there. And what you did in this facility in 1 week, creating a hospital, is just incredible. I don't know how you did it. Now, you did such a good job that I'm asking for 4 more from the president. That's the downside of being as good as you are at what you did. But what you did is really incredible. Now, I want to make 2 points to you. That I'm asking for, and I want to make 2 promises to you from the president. That's the downside. This is a different beast that we're dealing with. This is an invisible beast. It is an insidious beast. This is not going to be a short deployment. This is not going to be that you go out there for a few days, we work hard, and we go home. This is going to be weeks and weeks and weeks. This is going to be a long day. And it's going to be a hard day. And it's going to be an ugly day. And it's going to be a sad day. This is a rescue mission that you're on. The mission is to save lives. That's what you're doing. The rescue mission is to save lives. And as hard as we work, we're not going to be able to save everyone. And what's even more cruel is this enemy doesn't attack the strongest of us. It attacks the weakest of us. It attacks our most vulnerable, which makes it even worse in many ways. Because these are the people that every instinct tells us we're supposed to protect. These are our parents and our grandparents. These are our aunts, our uncles. These are a relative who is sick. And every instinct says, protect them, help them, because they need us. And those are the exact people that this enemy attacks. Every time I've called out the National Guard, I've said the same thing to you. I promise you, I will not ask you to do anything that I will not do myself, and I'll never ask you to go anywhere that I won't go myself. And the same is true here. We're going to do this, and we're going to do this together. My second point is, you are living a moment in history. This is going to be one of those moments they're going to write about and they're going to talk about for generations. This is a moment that is going to change this nation. Forges people, changes people, make them stronger, make them weaker, but this is a moment that will change character. And 10 years from now, you'll be talking about today to your children or your grandchildren, and you will shed a tear because you will remember the lives lost, and you'll remember the faces, and you'll remember the names, and you'll remember how hard we worked and that we still lost loved ones. And you'll shed a tear, and you should, because it will be sad. But you will also be proud. You'll be proud of what you did. You'll be proud that you showed up. You showed up when other people played it safe. You had the courage to show up, and you had the skill and the professionalism to make a difference and save lives. That's what you will have done. And at the end of the day, nobody can ask anything more from you. That is your duty, to do what you can when you can. And you will have shown skill and courage and talent. You'll be there with your mind. You'll be there with your heart. And you'll serve with honor. And that will give you pride, and you should be proud. I know that I am proud of you. And every time the National Guard has been called out, They have made every New Yorker proud. And I am proud to be with you yet again. And I'm proud to fight this fight with you. And I bring you thanks from all New Yorkers who are just so appreciative of the sacrifice that you are making, the skill that you're bringing, the talent that you're bringing, and you give many New Yorkers confidence. So I say, my friends, that we go out there today, lives, and New York is going to thank you. God bless each and every one of you.
And there you have it. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo wrapping up his daily briefing on the coronavirus, talking to us from the Javits Center, where he was addressing the National Guard. The Javits Center, a sprawling convention facility on Manhattan's west side in the 30s, has now been turned into a massive medical facility. The governor describing this as a rescue mission, again talking to the National Guard, calling it, quote, a different beast, an insidious beast, and says it is not going to be a short deployment. Couple of key headlines to pass along. First of all, he has asked the Army Corps to build 4 more temporary hospitals. Also says a U.S. Navy hospital ship will be arriving in New York City on Monday. In terms of the numbers, the governor reporting that we have 44,635 coronavirus cases in New York. That is up from 37,258 yesterday. Also updating us with 519 deaths now from coronavirus in New York. That is up from 385 yesterday. Says 6,481 hospitalized with the virus in New York. Of that number, 1,583 in the ICU. Briefly checking markets, the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ are all lower as the selling continues on this Friday. What a volatile session again. Indeed, what a volatile week. With the S&P down 96, that is a drop right now of 3.7%. We've got the Dow down 890, a decline now of 4%. NASDAQ slumping 286 points, a drop there of 3.7%. 10-year up 1/430 seconds with a yield of 0.72%. Gold is down 0.4%, $16.24 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 5.9%, $21.25 a barrel. Indeed, another volatile session. Stay with Bloomberg right through the closing bell to see where things shake out. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks so much, Charlie Pellet. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, welcome to Balance of Power. I'm David Weston. Every day we hear more about the shortage of critical medical equipment and supplies, and we haven't seen the worst of it yet, with New York Governor Cuomo just saying the peak won't come for another 21 days here. We welcome now Scott Whitaker. He's CEO of AdvaMed, the largest medical device association in the world. So, Mr. Whitaker, thank you so much for joining us. Give us your take on where we are on this critical equipment, and I guess particularly I'm focused on the PPE, the personal protective equipment.
Yeah, David, thanks for having me on. And I want to associate myself with the remarks of the governor. We are facing an unprecedented crisis in this country, and it's America's medical technology companies that are on the front lines of this, making sure that we're diagnosing, treating, and preparing to get people through the hospital system and back to healthy lives again. So, particularly on your point about protective equipment, we have begun the process of scaling up manufacturing of all forms of personal protective equipment to well over 100% of our capacity. We're also working together with non-traditional medical technology and device companies like automakers and plastics makers and other things to scale up production as well. We give them the feedback they need on how to do this. They're scaling it up as well. So we're doing everything we can to meet demand, and I think we're going to meet the demand the government has for us.
So pick up specifically on the automakers, because we've had President Trump within the last hour tweeting critically of General Motors, saying they promised him 40,000 respirators. Now it looks like 6,000. Who's got the better of that argument? Is GM doing all that it can? Do you know?
Listen, I think everybody's doing all that they can. I understand the president's urgency. I'm sympathetic with that. But when you're talking about producing ventilators, this is not a product that you produce overnight. Over 1,700 individual component parts go into a ventilator, including software and hardware components, which are very challenging to produce. As the traditional medical technology companies, we're scaling up dramatically. And the support that GM and Ford and others can bring to this equation, and Tesla even including batteries that may go to it, are very, very important. So I think we're all doing everything we can right now, but I understand the president's urgency. We have that same level of urgency, and we appreciate the cooperation, frankly, we're getting broadly from government to help us get there.
Do we need to nationalize the effort in ways that we haven't thus far? Talk about the Defense Production Act, because some people think you could be using it more aggressively. For example, to just say, we're going to make X number of ventilators and then figure out who to tell they have to do it.
So I think the bigger issue for us in the short term is the allocation side. We can scale up manufacturing to produce a lot more than we are right now. In a typical year, we may do 2,000 or 3,000 ventilators. We're scaling that up to try to get to 6,000 to 10,000 ventilators, and we can scale it up even faster than that. The biggest challenge we have is not on the manufacturing side per se, but the allocation side, and that's where I think the federal government can really step in and help us. Where do these ventilators need to be shipped, to what hospitals, and how can they use them? The other thing I would say, David, is there's really 3 levels of ventilators that we're producing now. There's the lowest level, which are not the ones in the ICUs, but ones that help people stay healthy as they're moving toward the ICU and continue keeping them healthy as they move out of the most complicated ventilators. And so we're scaling production of all 3 levels of those, and with the president's help and with the White House's help, we'll meet the demand.
So how is the allocation being done right now? I mean, is it just first come, first serve? I mean, the governors want these things. I'm sure local hospitals want them. The president wants them. Who's deciding where they go when a ventilator comes off the line?
So initially, when it comes off the line, we fill the orders that we have. It may be from the federal government. It may be from the state government. It may be from the hospital healthcare system. So we fill those orders. We ship those orders with our distributors, and we get them into the system as quickly as we can. I think when you're in this situation of a public health emergency, a national disaster, essentially, that's why we're saying we would love someone else to do the allocation piece from this point going forward. We've recommended that to FEMA. I think they're taking that into consideration, and our hope is that they do it. I think it'll be a more efficient way for us to meet the demand, because we don't know the hot spots and where they are around the world right now, or in the United States specifically. That's where they could provide the most value. Get them into distribution systems that FEMA is so good at. Let us ship to one location, and you can get them there for us.
Let me ask you the simple question, which is probably overly simplistic. Is it a matter of money, or is it a matter of just getting ourselves organized properly?
I think it's both. I think it's a matter of money if you're doing it on a national scale. That's why we were pleased to see that in the stimulus bill that was passed, there was $16 billion dedicated for the national stockpile, which is the stockpile that purchases medical supplies and equipment, and they can use that very effectively to scale up on the procurement side. But it's also the process as well, making sure we can manufacture the scale that they need to get it there. And the coordination and communication is really a really important part of that. I am not one of those that likes to look back, David, and look where there was blame. Yeah. I feel very good about where we are today and the process going forward. I think we'll do our best to meet demand, and the cooperation has been very good.
Are you getting any pushback on the request to have FEMA or a national federal organization really allocate all this?
No, we're not. No, we are partners with the government, and our primary concern is making sure that patients get these products when they need them. And we're working hard to do that. We're not getting pushback. Everybody in this space wants the same thing. How can we work with the government to give products to hospitals and help patients who are suffering? That's our sole focus, and we'll deliver on that.
And we wish you every success in that effort. So thank you so much to Scott Whitaker of AdvaMed. We're going to turn now to a representative for the small businesses that are being hit so hard all across the country. We have a $2 trillion spending package on the way, and much of it is directed to those small businesses, and they are, after all, the backbone of the labor market in this country. Catherine Monson is chair of the International Franchise Association, which represents more than 10,000 franchisees nationwide. So thank you so much for joining us, Catherine. Give us a sense of how your members are doing right now.
Well, I have to tell you, our members are really struggling. Our franchisors, franchisees they're small businesses. And as you said, small businesses employ close to half of all private sector employment. And whether we're talking about jewelry stores or wedding planning businesses or children's services, estate planning, whatever it is, folks, if they're sheltering at home, are not going to those businesses. And, you know, I've been in business a long time. I've been through more than one recession.
Yeah, you're one of those small businesses, right? You yourself.
That's exactly right. But what is different about this time is instead of having sales decline 20 or 25%, they're going to zero. And this is, unprecedented. And what I'm so excited about is while the stimulus package isn't perfect, and I'm hopeful that it's going to get passed and signed into law. There's so much good in it that's going to help small businesses. And when it helps small businesses, it helps their employees, and it helps their employees' families. So we're really looking forward to the government getting that money out the door to these small businesses, to these employees as quickly as possible.
Well, and that's the key question. The next question is, they need it yesterday. What are the prospects of the federal government figuring out a way to get money into the hands of thousands upon thousands of small businesses across the country anytime soon?
Well, I have to tell you that Treasury Secretary Mnuchin has spent a lot of time on the phone. I've had the opportunity to talk with him. He's been with our IFA senior leadership staff, and I know that they are working to find a way to make the federal government act quickly. Then again, you and I both know that what they think act quickly is might be different than what you and I think act quickly is, but I know that they're going to work very, very hard to make that happen.
A lot of small businesses have had to lay off a lot of people very fast. We saw in the jobless claimants numbers, and it's expected those will go up. Is it too late to get those people back on the payroll? I mean, when this money starts to come, is it possible for small businesses to start bringing people back, particularly when most of us are stuck in our houses?
Well, I understand that, but there's some really great provisions in this Phase 3 coronavirus bill. You know, I look at the paycheck protection loans where small businesses can quickly get money, and that those loans then will be forgiven later if they have the same number of full-time equivalents at some point in the future as they did back in February. So, you know, I do believe that getting liquidity into small businesses is going to help. Every small business owner I know believes their employees are an asset, that they're important. Heck, we were having a labor shortage come last February, right? February 1st. We've been struggling to find employees. Right now, it's an unusual situation, but every small business owner I know wants to get those people back, wants to get their business running, wants to serve customers.
As I say, Catherine, you not only represent an awful lot of small businesses, you are one yourself. If you're a small business, how do you know even how to go about getting this money? Where do you go to apply? Do you go to your local bank? Where do you go? And what's the form that you have to fill out?
Well, you know, those regulations, those guidelines have not yet even been written. They'll be written once the bill is passed. But I'll tell you what I love about the International Franchise Association, of which I'm chair, and what I love about being a franchisor supporting my 700 franchisees is we're going to very quickly put together the tips and tricks. Go here, here's the link, here's the form you fill out. So once that information is available, the International Franchise Association is going to unleash that power to every one of their members, which is going to unleash all that information to their franchisees. And so as quickly as we know that stuff, we're going to get that in the hands of all of our Fast Lines franchisees, but also all of our member brands to their franchisees.
Here's the question that's too early to ask, but all of us really want the answer to. Can we get this turned around, or at least ameliorated fast enough that we don't do some permanent damage to the economy? Look at your franchisees. At what point do they just don't come back into the business? They go do something else, and we really permanently change the fabric of our society.
You know, I'm going to continue to always expect the best, prepare for the worst, and capitalize on what comes. I'm not letting my mind go there. We're working hard to help our franchisees. In most cases, we're being deemed an essential business. We are printing hundreds of contactless delivery signs for businesses that are delivering food, for hospitals on security and safety. And I think that my franchisees are going to get through this, and we're going to come out on the other side. And I just hope that this stimulus bill is implemented quickly. We get the liquidity in the marketplace. What I love about American entrepreneurs, and that's what small business people are, is they have heart, they have drive, they're innovative, they're focused, and if we get this liquidity in the marketplace fast, I'm going to be that positive person and think that we're going to have a good outcome.
And I don't want to take anything with that positivity at all, but as you look at this stimulus bill, this $2 trillion, is there anything that jumps out at you that says, boy, they missed that one?
Well, there are a handful of those, yes. And one of the things that really, really concerns me and many employers is that the expanded unemployment insurance is set at $15 an hour. Now, there are places in the country where hourly employees are getting $15 an hour, and those are expensive places like New York and California. But you take a look at Idaho, Colorado, Kansas, Arkansas, Tennessee, Minnesota, Ohio. There are a lot of great jobs that get paid less than $15 an hour. Those employees are able to live in nice houses that they've spent $160,000 on, right? You couldn't get a house in California for $160,000. But what's deeply concerning is, this. We think this is going to be incentive, and a disincentive to go back to work, and an incentive to stay at home and not work to make a little bit more money on unemployment insurance for 4 months.
It's very
deeply concerning.
Yeah, it's sort of
concerning.
Unintended consequences. The best of intentions. I just have to assume they thought they were doing something good, and it's hard when you're doing something that fast that's nationwide. We don't take into account local situations. So I really appreciate you being here today, Catherine. That was fascinating. It's Catherine Monson of the International Franchise Association. Coming up here, we're going to take a look at the markets with Kriti Gupta. It is an ugly day right now in markets. After having 3 days up, they are down 3.5% right now. We're going to talk to you about why that is. That's coming up next on Balance of Power, and we are on Bloomberg Radio.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
This is a vital update from the government about coronavirus. To help save lives, stay at home. Anyone can spread coronavirus. Only leave your home for the following reasons: to shop for basic necessities, to pick up medicine or to provide care to those who need it, to exercise once a day, alone or with members of your household. Only travel to work when you absolutely cannot work from home. If you have to go out for any of these reasons, always stay 2 meters apart. Do not meet others outside your household, even friends and family. Stay home. Protect the NHS. Save lives.
And breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down Friday, but we are still on track for the best week for the U.S. stock market in 11 years. It is a down Friday, though. S&P 500 index dropping 88 points now, down 3.4%. The Dow is down 817, a drop there of 3.6%. While NASDAQ is slumping 264 points, lower now by 3.4%. 10-year up 1 4/30 seconds with a yield of 0.72%. Gold is down 0.3%, 16.26 the ounce. Crude, a major story today with a continuing sell-off, dropping another 5.5%. Talking about West Texas Intermediate crude, down 1.2%, 21.36 a barrel. So the S&P 500 index now lower as we recap here by 86 points, down by just about 3.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues, the Friday edition. Once again, here he is, David Weston.
Thank you so very much, Charlie Pellet. Well, Charlie gave us those numbers, and they weren't very pretty about what the markets are doing right now. So let's find out if we can learn anything more about why that might be. Here to take us through the markets is Kriti Gupta of Bloomberg's MLive Markets blog. So Charlie set us up here. I'm looking right now at the equity markets down between 3 and 3.5%. We had 3 nice days going. What happened?
Well, I mean, we were seeing 3 days of a rally that is the most since 1933, and it actually caught a lot of investors here off guard because we have been seeing volatile swings in both directions. The kind of gut instinct, if we're down one day, we should be up the next. So to see a 2-day rally was even a shock. A 3-day rally really blew us out of the water. What you want to keep in mind, though, is that those swings are still happening. Volatility is still very high. Today's sell-off following the last rally really isn't all that surprising here.
So it isn't surprising. We take a look at the month. We're about to end the quarter here, which could raise all sorts of questions here. How have we done over the course of the month rather than just this week?
Well, I mean, like I believe Charlie said, we are seeing the best week in, in 11 years, I believe. And I just want to look up the data really quickly, so I don't want to mislead you, but this has been a fairly volatile month here. And what you want to keep in mind is that the big trend that we were seeing was that as we saw kind of stocks really drop, the sell-off really kind of accelerate, we saw the VIX actually jump quite a bit to a record 83 level. Now, what you want to keep in mind here is that we're kind of going into another phase here where we're still maybe seeing a little bit of a rally, but we're not seeing those massive 11, 12% swings, even 8% swings on the upside that we were seeing earlier this month. What you want to keep in mind, though, is that now the hesitation here is that we see volatility still extremely high. We're at 64 on the VIX. That is less than the 83. So you're seeing volatility drop a little bit, but that doesn't necessarily mean that we're in the all clear for stocks. Stocks that continue to drop here more.
Still decidedly elevated. Okay, thanks so much to Bloomberg's Kriti Gupta. Coming up, we're going to talk with Carly Fiorina, the former CEO of Hewlett-Packard, about how to manage a business through a crisis like this one, and what would she do about that offer of money from the federal government. That's coming up on Balance of Power on Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stocks are falling more than 3% as investors assess the pandemic's effect on the economy, and on news that the U.S. has now overtaken China with the most coronavirus cases worldwide. The massive $2 trillion stimulus bill is set for passage in the House today, but its success will largely depend on how quickly aid can be distributed to consumers and businesses. The University of Michigan's National Consumer Sentiment Index posted its biggest drop in more than a decade as COVID-19 forced a shutdown of U.S. employers and disrupted daily life. And Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic predicts the U.S. economy will contract in the second quarter, but says it should start to rebound at some point in the third quarter. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Hi, it's Olivia Munn with my shelter pets, Frankie and Chance. Say hi, guys. When I adopted them, I discovered that they both have incredible personalities. Chance's sole purpose in life is to love and to be loved. Frankie is a little bit of a scoundrel and always entertaining. They're a little bit of a lot of things, but they're all pure love. Adopt pure love at theshelterpetproject.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the Humane Society of the United States, and Maddie's Fund.
Leaders are born.
What does it take to get the markets back on the rails?
Born leaders are here.
The timeline for that can be slow.
Karen Moscow.
Several nations are negotiating to evacuate diplomats.
And Nathan Hager.
How are you advising clients to navigate the shifting headlines?
Bloomberg Daybreak, weekday mornings at 5 Eastern.
Are we heading into correction territory, do you think?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, money is on the way for U.S. companies, but will it be enough? And will it come with too many strings attached? We talk with Carly Fiorina, former CEO of Hewlett-Packard. But first, let's get a market check with Charlie Pellet.
And I thank you very much. Here's what's going on. First of all, we thank our listeners for keeping it locked into Bloomberg Radio as we work overtime to keep you up to date on all of these fast-moving market developments. You're working from home. We're working for you. Here's what's going on. The Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all selling off again. Another turbulent day for the U.S. stock market with the S&P down 89 points right now. That is a drop of 3.4%. The Dow is down 826 points, lower by 3.7%, and NASDAQ down 264. That is a drop there of 3.4%. 10-year up 1 3/30 seconds with a yield right now 0.73%. Gold down 0.3%, 16.25 the ounce. And West Texas Intermediate crude plunging now by 5.8% for WTI. That is a drop of $1.29 a barrel, 21.32. Slumping demand because of the coronavirus. Also a price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. Brent, by the way, 24.31, dropping 7.7%. Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas President Robert Kaplan says he expects U.S. unemployment to peak, quote, in the low to mid-teens this year as businesses hunker down from the coronavirus pandemic before recovering to around 7 to 8% by year's end. And in a Bloomberg television and radio interview this morning, he talked about a number of other topics, including the scope of the Federal Reserve's programs.
The proposal from the Fed point of view is there's a number of special purpose vehicles that are being created to implement these programs to buy assets from commercial paper to asset-backed securities to corporate bonds to municipal commercial paper. And so each of these special purpose vehicles requires approximately $10 billion.
And Kaplan spoke this morning with our Michael McKee. Also speaking to Michael, Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta President Raphael Bostic, who said while the U.S. economy will contract in the second quarter, it should start to rebound at some point in the third quarter, and the recovery could be strong. Nothing strong for the bulls today with the S&P dropping another 78 points. Yes, we are on track for a winning week, but today the S&P down by 2.9%, recapping on the Dow down 3.2%, NASDAQ down 3.1%. Cannot forget gold down by 0.3%. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that, David Weston, is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Thanks very much, Charlie. It's a record spending package, but the devil is always in the details. Details like how long it will take to get the money to the people and companies who need it, and what conditions will be attached. No CEO has seen a crisis quite like this one, but Carly Fiorina managed her way through her own share of ups and downs when she ran Hewlett-Packard. She is founder of Carly Fiorina Enterprises and Unlocking Potential, and we welcome her now back to Bloomberg. So, Ms. Fiorina, thank you so much for joining us. Give us, as I say, no, you can't replicate this crisis and earlier crises, but we can learn from past ones. We did have 2008, 2009. We had 9/11. We had the dot-com bubble bursting. What could we learn from those that could be applicable today?
Well, thank you for having me back, David, and please call me Carly. I think a couple things. Number one, it is vital in these organizations that leaders continue to communicate with the organization clearly, candidly, completely, that leaders say what they know, say what they don't know, say the decisions they can make now, and admit the decisions they need to make later. In other words, now is not the time for a leader to disappear, nor is it the time for a leader to fill the airwaves with happy talk or spin or stuff that isn't completely true. Now is the time for candid, clear, complete, consistent communications, point one. I think point two, it's important to bear in mind during a very difficult crisis that while you are focused on the short term and immediate needs and requirements and decisions that must be made, you need to keep the medium and the long term in mind. Because if you don't, you're going to make not as wise decisions, and you'll be weaker coming out of this than stronger. Example, companies have no revenue. They need to cut expenses. You could say to yourself, I need to cut as many employees as possible, as quickly as possible. Or you could say to yourself, I need to cut employees, but I also need to be prepared for when it's time to hire those employees back. And so how do I move forward in a way that is likely to increase their loyalty to me and to ensure that we stay connected during a difficult time?
So take us through that part of it specifically. We see some of the major banks now saying things like, we're going to keep our employees together at least through 2020. Give us the sense of, first of all, you need to have the balance sheet. You can do that, the cash flow to do that. But what's the equation in a CEO's mind about making that sort of commitment?
Well, I think first, you referenced the Federal Reserve and played a few comments from the Federal Reserve chairman. Look, I think it's clear that the Federal Reserve is making a whole set of unprecedented tools and packages available. And a great deal of that is for the purpose of giving companies the credit backing and the cash flow they need to manage through a difficult time. And so CEOs need to bear that in mind, particularly of larger companies. We can come back to whether small businesses are getting all that they need. But, for example, this will end, and then everyone is going to have to rehire. And so if you can furlough your employees, hang on to them, pay them, a cut in an employee's pay and putting them on a furlough is far better over the long term than just laying them off. And so walking yourself through, when do I believe I'm likely to begin hiring again? It's always easier to retain a trained employee than to go out and hire someone who's never worked for you before. And remember that everyone may be hiring at the same time when this is over. And so strengthening the loyalty and the connection between you and your employees, even in this difficult time, is far-sighted and important.
One of the things that was a sticking point in this $2 trillion plus package of spending was conditions placed on loans, particularly to the large companies. We'll come back to small, but particularly the large companies. Would they give you pause if you were running a large corporation today?
Well, first of all, I'm not a fan of corporate bailouts. I think we have plenty of evidence that corporate bailouts don't work particularly well. If you go back and look at the auto bailout, you will recall, it seems like a long time ago, but GM and Chrysler got bailed out. Ford, who had made different decisions, better decisions, said, no, we can weather the storm. We don't need a bailout. As the years went on, of course, Ford's decision, based upon their own strength and their wise decisions, put them at a disadvantage. But more than that, the truth is those large automobile companies, yes, they saved union jobs, but a whole slew of small businesses, car dealers, small businesses in the supply chain were destroyed, and the number of small business jobs that were lost was larger than the number of union jobs saved. Look, every job saved is important, but these corporate bailouts aren't a panacea, and they come with a price. In this particular case, I don't think we should be bailing out the airlines. They've spent the last 10 years buying back their stock, $46 billion worth. They've loaded up their balance sheets with cheap debt instead of strengthening their balance sheets in the good times so that they are prepared for the bad times, which always come. I don't think Boeing deserves a bailout. My goodness. Yeah. Look at what they've done with the 737 MAX.
It's what you call a moral hazard, as I understand
it. Well, and you know, it's more than a moral hazard. I guess the reason I'm pointing this out is, look, I'm a free market advocate. I think most of your listeners are. Yep. In the free market, a market actor bears the responsibility for both the risks they take.
They're taking us off. I'm sorry. Carly Fiorina, thanks so much.
Want to know a quick, easy way to see if your favorite podcasts have a new episode available? Just go to the home screen on your TuneIn app and see the latest editions under the Your New Episode section. Happy listening.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now, it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
But there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique to
listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
News 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down Friday, stocks showing signs of fatigue after the fastest rally in 9 decades as the coronavirus pandemic continues to roil markets. Treasuries gained, oil is plunging. Let's begin with crude down 4.7% today, now at $25.53, talking about West Texas Intermediate crude. Barrel of Brent down $1.79, down 6.8%. Brent, of course, the global benchmark, now at $24.55 a barrel. S&P is lower by 76, down 2.9%. The Dow is down 709, down 3.2%. And NASDAQ is lower by 233 points, a drop there of 3%. 10-year yield 0.73%. Again, gold down 0.2%, 16.27 the ounce. Recapping, stocks lower across the board here. A Friday sell-off looks like a winning week, though. S&P down 77, a drop right now of 2.9%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Lots going on. He's got it covered. Balance of power continues. And once again, David Weston.
If you say so, Charlie Pellet, I'll accept it. Okay, thanks very much, Charlie. Live from the Interactive Broker Studio, this is Balance of Power. Mike Leavitt served as governor of Utah and then went on to be Secretary of Health and Human Services under President George W. Bush. So he is particularly well suited to explain the respective roles of state and local government in this crisis. And we welcome him now to Bloomberg. So I'm not sure whether to call you Secretary or Governor, but I'll try Governor. Governor, thank you so much for joining us. Give us a sense of how a governor addresses a public health crisis like this.
First, it's important to acknowledge that there's a role for everyone here. There's a role for the federal government that's unique. There's a role for state. There's a role for local government. This is a uniquely local kind of emergency, and therefore there's a role for everyone. If you'd like, we could start with the federal government.
Yeah, let's.
The federal government obviously has a job in the area of vaccine and drug approval that only they can do. The federal government also has the capacity to begin to shift the risk of something like this to a broader base through tax dollars. And so they have appropriated federal tax dollars and will now distribute them to the states, who will use them at the local level, and to businesses who need subsidies based on the national interest. That's something only the federal government can do. The federal government is able to collect information and help define what's actually happening, situational awareness. That's something that only the federal government can do. The federal government's in a position to do things related to our international allies and the disease network that's required to respond to a pandemic. Again, only the federal government can do. But beyond that, almost everything has to be done at the local and state level, because that's where the public health assets are. And in fact, I learned very quickly in managing some very large-scale emergencies that when they happen in a storm or an earthquake or a terrorist event, the federal government basically just calls the states and says, and would say, can you send your assets? And we would do so. But in a pandemic, that's not available because it's happening everywhere at the same time. And so it has to be locally managed.
Address one specific issue that's come up and will continue to come up, which is how quickly we let people get out of their houses and go back to work. Is that a matter for the federal government to take a position on, or is that really state by state? And even within a state, do you have to draw a distinction among different areas within the state?
The power to actually compel people to stay in their homes or to close their businesses resides in local and state government, not the federal government. Therefore, there needs to be a collaborative relationship between the states and the federal government. And I think that's one of the things that will play out as we begin the process of determining how that can occur. There's a growing body of thought that the federal government has a role, but it's mostly to provide information and insight on situational awareness. The state and the local governments will likely need then to have a standard against which they begin to make judgments, but the final decisions on closing schools, on closing businesses, on shelter-in-place orders will likely reside at the state level, and in some cases the
local level.
Talk about supplies and equipment. We've all gotten to know about N95 masks and even PAPRs, some of the equipment that the healthcare workers need desperately to protect themselves as they treat a growing number of patients. Is that something that should be allocated at this point at the federal level? Because as of now, as I understand it, it's we just had somebody from Medical Device Organization on who said it's basically they fill the orders that they have.
Well, on certain types of medical equipment, let's talk about ventilators, which is a big part of the conversation right now. There's going to be a limited supply. They're working hard to grow the supply, but the likelihood is that as we see hot spots develop around the country, we're seeing it in New York right now. There are other cities that appear to be moving in the direction that could cause them to have a similar situation as New York. There'd be value in being able to move assets like ventilators from one market to another. And FEMA is the logical organization to coordinate that and to allocate resources that are scarce. When you get down to things like personal protective equipment, it's going to be, and most of it is disposable. It's unlikely that we'll see the federal government playing a heavy role, though we do have stockpiles at the federal level that can be deployed. But again, it's the dilemma that if it's happening everywhere, it's more complicated than if it's just happening in a unique geographic location.
Where everybody is searching for a vaccine, and if not a vaccine, a treatment. And we've heard various drugs have been approved for other uses, such as malaria or Ebola, perhaps being used. Can that process be expedited? I mean, can the federal government, I won't say cut corners, but actually make adjustments, recognizing the fact that people are dying?
Well, if people are dying, and they are, then obviously acting expeditiously is appropriate and very important. There are risks, however. The 1967 pandemic, is a swine flu, actually never developed as a full pandemic virus, but there was enough danger that the federal government developed a vaccine and injected it into the arms of millions of people. And years later, when I was Secretary of Health, we were still dealing with some of the litigation that came out of that, as people actually lost their lives from the vaccine, not from the actual pandemic virus. So, and when you read things about medications, look, they're serious and dangerous. They're very helpful at the right time. So I think you'll see everyone working to try to find that balance.
Governor, this is not a time for second guessing, although there's a lot of second guessing going on. There will come a time, it's not now. But not to second guess, but just in terms of a constructive suggestion, as you look at the process at the state level, at the federal level, is there anything you would like to see being done or being done more of that isn't yet?
I think that the conversation we had about allocation of ventilators is something I would like to see FEMA take charge on. I think it's a vital resource. I think they're the only ones who can legitimately do it. I think there's a need, and it needs to happen quickly.
As best you can judge it, we've now had three. Once they pass, they're going to vote shortly on this $2.2 trillion stimulus package. We have three different statutes appropriating money. As best you can determine, are we putting enough money into the system for the health care part of it?
I think we'll be visiting this again, and maybe again. This is an unprecedented effort. It's an unprecedented emergency. We're learning as we go. We don't know exactly how this virus is going to behave. In military terms, we're fighting a cunning enemy that is a networked enemy that has the capacity to shift and change and mutate in ways that we have a hard time predicting. I guess my point is there's a lot we don't know. So we're going to have to do our best.
Yeah, a lot still coming. Thank you so very much. I really appreciate it. It's former Governor Mike Leavitt of Utah. Coming up on Balance of Power, Bloomberg's Mike McKee is here to talk about the Fed's role and also his two big interviews with Fed presidents today. That's coming up next on Balance of Power, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Like what you're listening to? Want to make getting back to it easier? Use the favorite button to keep track of the stations and podcasts you love on TuneIn. Just tap or click the heart icon to add it to your favorites. Then find all your go-to audio under the Favorites tab. Pretty easy, right?
It's TuneIn Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now, it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
Well, there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Start with something extreme.
What are you comparing this to? Tom Keene and Jonathan Turrell.
Your call, your message to your clients on a morning like this morning.
Weekday mornings at 7 Eastern.
What are you doing to adjust your economic growth numbers?
On Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com.
Fiscal stimulus could really shape things in the months ahead.
Bloomberg, the world is listening.
To protect her home and family in a disaster, Karen was willing to wade through water, mud, and insurance paperwork.
Yeah, I can do this.
You go, Karen! By simply understanding and updating what her insurance covers and doesn't cover now, she'll be better prepared no matter when disaster strikes. Learn other simple ways to protect your home and family before a natural disaster at ready.gov. That's ready.gov. A message from FEMA and the Ad Council.
Why is delivering the best client experience a top priority at BNY Mellon's Pershing? Michelle Feinstein, Director of Client Engagement, explains.
Today's investors want a financial relationship that's on demand, customized, and leverages the latest digital technology. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, helping advisory firms and broker-dealers create great experiences for their clients is our priority. Through our integrated wealth experience, we give you a high-touch service, flexible technology choices, and expert insights, so you can deliver a highly personalized experience to your clients at every step, from onboarding to wealth planning, to performance analysis and more. And because we're part of BNY Mellon, you'll benefit from more than 230 years of strength and stability. At Pershing, we're personally invested in your success.
Visit Pershing.com to learn more about Pershing's integrated wealth experience. Pershing LLC and Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC are both members of FINRA and SIPC.
This is Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
Live from the Interactive Brokers Studio, this is Balance of Power. I am David Weston. No one doubts that the Fed is prepared to do just about anything to cushion the economic blow coming down the pike. And Bloomberg International Economics and Policy Correspondent Mike McKee talked with two regional Fed presidents just today about what form that help might take. So welcome, Mike. Thank you so much for being here. Give us a sense. You talked to Mr. Kaplan, you talked to Mr. Bostic. What did you learn from them?
Well, they're basically experiencing in their districts the same thing that we do here in New York, to a lesser extent, but it's still the same. Businesses closing, people worried about their jobs. Both of them expect a very big spike in the unemployment rate. And they're both somewhat hopeful that once we get past this, the economy can snap back relatively quickly because it was strong going into it. But they can see nobody knows at this point.
Exactly. On the unemployment front, though, you had, was it Mr. Bostic who said that he thinks mid
Kaplan.
Kaplan said
Rob Kaplan from Dallas.
Mid-teens, low to mid-teens?
Low to mid-teens, which it sounds awful. Then you put it in the context of Jim Bullard saying it could be 30%. But mid-teens, we during the Great Recession, we only got up to 10%.
Wow, isn't that something? I remember that time, and we were pretty scared about the 10%, no question about it. What did they say, if anything, about how quickly they can help get some of this money out into people's pockets? Because increasingly we hear, particularly small businesses and things, saying we think the Fed is going to be really key to actually getting the cash.
Yeah, they say they're working feverishly on it. They wouldn't put a date on it, but they both said very, very soon. The idea is going to be that you go to your bank and apply for a loan because the banks have the capability of processing it. They know you, they know your needs, and then the bank will make you a loan and then go to the Fed to get that money back. So hopefully the bank infrastructure is already there. If the Fed can set up the infrastructure and they can set up the criteria fairly quickly, maybe within a week or two, they could start getting some of this going.
After the great financial crisis, there were certain curbs put on the Fed, so they couldn't do everything they had
Hold on.
Exactly. Hold on. Exactly right. And we had people like former Secretary of Treasury Hank Paulson say, I'm really worried about the next one because they may not be prepared to do it. I don't hear much about those curbs anymore.
Yeah, well, the CARES bill that they're voting on essentially eliminates almost all of that, at least temporarily. The Fed is able to use its, you've heard the phrase 13.3, that's Section 13.3 of the Federal Reserve Act. In an emergency and unusual and exigent circumstances, they can use all these emergency powers, and the Congress is just giving it right back to them. Congress stared into the abyss and decided maybe muzzling the one organization that can help quickly wasn't such a good idea.
And I must give you credit because you're the first one, at least for me, who flagged this notion that in this bill, as I understand it, Treasury can put up some money. And as long as they take first risk, which I think is 10% of the risk, that allows the Fed to really lend. You named it first, and I couldn't believe it, $4 trillion.
Yeah, it's a little more than that now because they gave them more. $454 billion goes to Treasury, to the Exchange Stabilization Fund, which they can then put into these Fed programs, and the Fed can leverage it about 10 to 1 has been what they've been doing. And then you end up with $4.5 trillion. Add that to the $2 trillion that's in the package. And to paraphrase Everett Dirksen, you're talking about real money.
Starting to talk about real money. That's right. What can they use that money for? Anything?
Well, depending on how creative they get, they can lend the money. They can use it to purchase securities. Basically, purchase securities or give it to banks to make loans is the easy way of saying it.
One of the concerns this week particularly has been liquidity and what's happened to spreads. Has that resolved itself with the swap lines and things like that?
Not completely resolved itself, but it's gotten a lot better. We've seen credit spreads come down. The repo rate has come down significantly. We're almost seeing more reverse repos where the Fed gives you a security and you give them money. They take the money out of the system than repos. So, yeah, that part is working.
End of a very long week. Thanks so much to Bloomberg's Mike McKee. That does it for this hour of Balance of Power. It will continue with Paul Sweeney. I'm David Weston, and this is Bloomberg Radio.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. Designer face masks have been around for at least a decade, a niche market catering to the chronically sick, along with frequenters of Burning Man and fashionistas in Beijing. Now, amid the coronavirus pandemic, these reusable $70 luxury masks are a coveted accessory for wealthy people around the globe. Gwyneth Paltrow posted an Instagram wearing a black mask from Swedish company Arinim. But critics see them as a new symbol of inequality at a time when protective equipment for medical workers is in woefully short supply. Also in short supply, dogs and cats. Joining toilet paper and hand sanitizer and bottled water, there's suddenly a run on adopted and fostered pets in New York City. Applications have surged as much as tenfold in the past 2 weeks. Ordered to shelter in place at home and both a little bored and a lot anxious, New Yorkers apparently see the four-legged friends as a way to calm frayed nerves. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
You're living in a world built on science, political and economic.
You've got to believe the labour market gets hit.
Computer and medical.
Clarify where we are on a test.
It all makes a difference.
What do you think needs to happen in terms of governmental response?
And it's all here.
He expects the virus to peak quite a long time from now.
Get your science straight.
The hand washing campaign, is this actually a good strategy?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
There are everyday actions to help prevent the spread of respiratory diseases. Wash your hands. Avoid close contact with people who are sick. Avoid touching your eyes, nose, and mouth. Stay home when you are sick. Cover your cough or sneeze. Clean and disinfect frequently touched objects with household cleaning spray. For more information, visit cdc.gov/COVID-19. This message brought to you by the National Association of Broadcasters and this station.
Message and data rates may apply. T&C and privacy terms can be found at babbel.com/terms. Please don't text and drive.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then try Babbel for free by texting EXPLORE to 64,000. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just text EXPLORE to 64,000 and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or text EXPLORE to 64,000 and try it for free. Text EXPLORE to 64,000.
From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. The Dow, the S&P, NASDAQ all declining off our session lows on this Friday. Yes, a down day. On track, though, for a big up week. S&P headed for its best week in 11 years, but it does remain 25% below its February record. Here's where we stand right now. Another day of selling with the S&P down 70 points, down 2.7% at 2559. The Dow is down 663 points, down 2.9%, and NASDAQ lower by 222 points. That is a drop now of just about 2.9%. The 10-year up 1 point now with a yield of 0.74%. We've got gold down 0.2%, $16.27 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude lower by 4.9%. A barrel of WTI 21.50. Brent is at 24.62 for Brent crude. That is a drop right now of just about 0.6%. Well, as I mentioned, gold is down, but it is eyeing its biggest weekly gain since 2008 as investors pile into gold-backed ETFs. And with more on that story, here's Bloomberg's Renita Young.
The coronavirus outbreak has thrown the global gold market into upheaval, causing a logistical nightmare for many suppliers. And disruptions in gold supply chains have combined with surging demand for the traditional haven to drive prices higher during the week. Standard Chartered Bank says retail demand may drive the next wave higher in gold. Meanwhile, the Saudi-Russia oil price war continues, and some industrial metals head higher on stimulus measures. Renita Young, Bloomberg Radio.
Hertz Global Holdings discussing options with banks to raise cash as the rental car giant seeks to weather a worldwide slowdown in travel. This, according to people with knowledge of the matter. Hertz shares, they are down now by 10.8%. And Southwest Airlines says it is losing, quote, big money on every flight, raising the risk of worker furloughs in the longer term despite billions of dollars in immediate aid from the U.S. government. Southwest down now by 8.9%. It is 1:02 on Wall Street. That means it's time now for the Market Drivers Report with a focus on American depository receipts. Here he is, working from home, Dave Wilson.
Thanks, Charlie. ADRs are falling more than U.S. shares. The S&P ADR index is down 3.4%, and the S&P 500 is down 2.5%. ADRs of energy producers are lower as crude oil approaches an 18-year low set last week in New York trading. Now, the UK's BP, that stock, the ADR there has lost 6.3%. Class A ADRs of Royal Dutch Shell are down 7.8%, and Brazil's Petrobras is down 10.4%. Airline ADRs are lower as the industry heads for an estimated $252 billion of lost revenue this year because of the coronavirus. Germany's Lufthansa has fallen 4.8%. Air France KLM is down 8.5%, and Singapore Airlines is down almost 12%. India's Tata Motors has lost 8.9%. The owner of UK-based Jaguar Land Rover plans to separate its car business from its truck and bus operations. Indian car sales have fallen for 16 straight months and are poised to decline even more because of the coronavirus. Now, Japan's Toyota Motor has risen 0.8%. The automaker said U.S. plants will begin producing face shields early next week. Toyota also said it's completing deals to make ventilators and respirator hoods, Charlie.
All right, we thank you very much, Dave Wilson, tracking those American depository receipts. Dave touched on some of the oil giants, some of the global oil giants with American depository receipts. Just want to give you the latest rig count numbers. They are staggering. These numbers provided weekly by Baker Hughes. The U.S. rig count down by 44 to 728 in the latest reporting week. Recapping, oil plunging down 5%, WTI now at $21.45 a barrel. I'm Charlie Pellet, and that is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
This is Balance of Power.
We have the strongest economy by far in the world.
We need an economy that works for everybody.
I am the one who has the broadest coalition.
Where the world of politics meets the world of business.
They've got the money they need to run a very competitive race.
These lawyers brought the case, and in my view, they should be sanctioned.
We want certainty in the markets. We want certainty in our trading relationships.
The administration is trying to create a new divided world.
Balance of Power with David Weston on Bloomberg Radio.
From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, welcome to the second hour of Balance of Power. I'm Paul Sweeney, sitting in for David Weston. Well, after three really strong risk-on days, we're seeing some pullbacks in the markets today. The equity market's off about 2.5% to 3%, kind of trading around that range today. So, giving raise to the question, is this those past 3 days just kind of a dead cat bounce, or is it putting in a little bit of a floor into the market? I think investors are trying to test that model right now. To get a sense of kind of where we are in the markets, we are privileged to welcome John Burke. John's a strategist and CEO at Burke Financial Strategies. John, thanks so much for joining us. Help us put into context just what we've seen today and this week, the wild swings in the equity markets.
Yeah, hey, Paul, good afternoon. What's the saying? Sometimes months go by and nothing happens. Well, Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday of this week, the market was up 20%. That is more money than you would have made in the last 3 years in the stock market in 3 days. So you're talking about you got days where years happen.
Yep.
And then today, the market 3 days it went up 20%. That's just too much, too fast, and the market is taking a breather today. Down right now, I show it down 2.7%. So it almost makes me feel better about things because that would be normal. And it seems to me in a lot of regards, credit spreads, the yield curve steepening, that the markets are starting to get back to normal. So that's my take on today's action.
Yeah, it's interesting. One of the things, there's so much uncertainty out there, John. We know that. The economists don't really know where this is going. Is it a V shape? Is it a U? Is it an L? So where's the economy going? I don't know. We have, tremendous upheaval in the energy markets. So as you look at this week's trading and, arguably putting in perhaps a little bit of a base where maybe this market can find some footing, or do you think that given that economic uncertainty, it's pretty clear or pretty likely that we will retest some lows, maybe set some new lows?
Well, I'm sure we're not out of the woods yet. We've certainly not reached peak cases in the COVID-19 in this country yet. So I would say that we're probably in a bottoming process, so it'll take a while. I mean, it might take us another year to make another 20%, but that'd be a nice return. And I will say, it's still a stock pickers market here. There are all kinds of opportunities, things that don't look right that are opportunities to get in cheap.
So, all right. So, where are some areas that you've been looking at? I mean, there's certain areas that have been clearly just been crushed, whether it's the cruise lines or the airlines and things like that. Where have you been looking?
Yeah. So, one example would be in the energy space. The energy space, everything's just gotten crushed because the energy space has got two things going wrong. One is you have, of course, demand going down a lot. Nobody's driving cars right now. And second, you've got so much supply coming in the market. So, but if you look at the refining companies, for example, Valero buys crude oil, they refine it, and they sell gasoline. So Valero, they only have one of the two problems, which is demand. So once the virus recession is over, and people start driving again, Valero should be in good shape, and they're down by half. So wouldn't that be great if you could buy a company like that and retrace that back to 45 back to 90?
Are you expecting to see some consolidation in that energy space? The shale producers in particular, some of the smaller ones, with the smaller balance sheets, less well capitalized, really running into trouble here with $21 oil.
Yeah, I don't know. I just don't want to invest in any of those names right now because I think it's a really long road back, and some of them won't make it. So that's why, for us, if we're going to invest in the energy space, it's going to have to be, first of all, we're just going to dabble in the space. And second of all, it's going to have to be names that will do fine with demand coming back, not with supply, say, evening out.
So it's interesting. This market's been fairly indiscriminate on the way down. As you look towards the other side, do you expect these groups such as technology that historically over the last 10 years of the bull market were leaders? Do you expect them to once again lead once we do get to the other side?
Yes, I think that technology in the last 5 years, you really only had top line growth in technology and healthcare stocks, and I think those are the two sectors you want to be in heavier going forward. Technology, because perhaps more of us will work from home on an ongoing basis, and it's easier to do so if we're set up with technology. And one name there that we like is Skyworks, which is a major supplier to Apple. So talking about stock pickers market, Skyworks is down 27% year to date. They should be really highly correlated to Apple, given that 50% of their sales go to Apple. They make and design semiconductors. So Apple's down 15. They're down 27. They've got a higher free cash flow than Apple. They're more profitable than Apple. So to me, that there are names even in a great sector like the technology sector where you can still buy really cheap, 27% off where it was.
Hey, John, thanks so much for joining us. We appreciate your thoughts. John Burke, strategist and CEO at Burke Financial Strategies, doing some, I think kind of just as John was suggesting, picking off a couple of names here or there that he feels confident has done the work in and feels like when we do get to the other side, that could perform well, and maybe even take a look at some of the names in the energy sector, some of the better balance sheets John was suggesting. Looking at the markets here, still trading off 2.8% on the S&P, the Dow off 3%. That's 700 points even, we'll call it there. 21,850 on the Dow Jones Industrials. Looking at the NASDAQ, doing a little bit better, up about 2.9% versus the Dow. That's 225 points on the NASDAQ, 7570 for the NASDAQ. Coming up, Tom Orlick, Bloomberg Economics. How bad will this economic outlook be for the remainder of the year?
A pack needs someone to follow.
It's got to be important for somebody to have a breakout moment.
Don't look now, but they're behind you.
Imports declined 2.8%.
Bloomberg Daybreak.
Sources tell us that agreement is expected to include commitments on U.S. intellectual property.
With Karen Moscow and Nathan Hager.
Could we see that play into the results and the forward guidance?
Weekday mornings at 5 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business app, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
At age 30, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, you can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscriptions.
You're fierce. You take care of business and don't hold back. Taking care of your health shouldn't be any different. You know when something's off. Don't ignore symptoms like fatigue, joint pain, and rashes. Listen to your body. It could be lupus. We're here to help you take control. Learn how at BeFierceTakeControl.org. Brought to you by the Lupus Foundation of America and the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
The happy family of 3 were about to welcome a new member. That's right, they were finally getting a dog.
Buy on eBay, dog bed from £12.
First, they had to make a few adjustments.
Sell white rug.
And prepare the kids for the reality of owning a pet.
Buy biodegradable poop bags from under £6.
Everyone instantly fell in love with Little Rocky. Unfortunately, Little Rocky fell in love with a cushion. Buy, sell, eBay.
Delivery costs may apply.
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Apply by the 31st of March for a chance to win your first year in halls. Visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Listen to Raj go. Polyrhythm, paradiddle. A drum solo so epic, he nearly forgot his mom's birthday back in Delhi. Good thing Raj has Western Union on his phone and can send money quickly online. Download the app today. This service is provided by Western Union. FX gains apply.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now, it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
Well, there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique.
To listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Your current job opportunities. Bloomberg LP is an equal opportunity employer. The address once again is bloomberg.com/careers.
25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pellet. Down Friday here, 750-point drop for the Dow, down 3.3%. S&P down 79. That's a drop of 3%. NASDAQ down 237, lower by 3%. Stocks showing signs of fatigue after the fastest rally in 9 decades as the coronavirus pandemic continues to roil markets. Treasuries gained, oil plunged. Right now we have got the 10-year with a yield of 0.72%. Gold down 0.2%, $16.27 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude plunging another 5.5% at $21.33 a barrel. The SIBO volatility gauge, the so-called fear gauge, on track for a 10th straight close above 60. It had averaged 18.7 over the past year. Recapping, stocks lower, S&P down 77, a drop now of 2.9%. Gold again down 0.3%, $16.27 the ounce. I'm Charlie Pellet. That is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Paul Sweeney, sitting in for David Weston. Well, as we wait for Congress to pass the fiscal stimulus bill, economists are debating, is it enough? Do we need more? And what will the impact be from the coronavirus pandemic on the U.S. economy in 2020? To help us answer that, we welcome our good friend Tom Orlik. He's a chief economist for Bloomberg Economics. Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Do you have a sense here, given what we know about what the Fed has done already this week, what we believe Congress is about to do today with fiscal stimulus, how does that color kind of Bloomberg Economics and the outlook you guys have for the economic progression in 2020?
Well, I think there's a couple of positive things that are happening, Paul. So the first one is the Fed was really quick to get into action on this, both in terms of taking interest rates to zero and in terms of providing that critical backstop for financial stability by basically signaling that there's no limit to its asset purchases. The second thing, and to me, this was a little bit of a surprise, is that Congress has just moved really quickly to get a very big stimulus bill agreed. And we can argue about the details and whether it's framed in exactly the right way, but $2 trillion is a lot of money. And that's really important. So there's some positive things happening. The issue is that none of this is going to stop a deep contraction in the U.S. economy in the second quarter of the year. The government rightly has told people, stay home, don't go to your office, don't go to your factory. When that happens, it doesn't matter how much stimulus you're putting into the economy, you're still going to see an enormous contraction. We're penciling in a 9% drop in the second quarter. Some people on the street are talking about even larger numbers than that. So this is going to be a great financial crisis, order of magnitude contraction in the next 3 months.
It's interesting. 9% actually seems pretty bullish, given what we're hearing coming out from some certain Wall Street economists, even some Fed governors talking about, a 20 to 30% decline in Q2s. So it's going to be bad in the second quarter. Clearly, the market has been discounting that. Then I guess the question becomes, how long is that downturn going to last, and what kind of recovery can we expect? How do you guys think that might play out?
So I think the two critical questions here are the size of the stimulus and the evolution of the outbreak. So on the size of the stimulus, basically what you need is enough money to compensate people for the incomes that they've lost during the period of lockdown and confinement. And if you can do that, if you can make households whole, if you can make businesses whole, then once the outbreak comes under control, then the economy can get back to work. There's not too many bankruptcies. There's not too much of a damage to the fabric of the economy. We think the $2 trillion stimulus is basically in the right ballpark to do that. We'll see. Maybe some of the more dire projections on the second quarter will come true, and there'll need to be an even larger fiscal stimulus. But from where we are right now, we think the fiscal stimulus is about the right size. The more difficult question, Paul, and of course as an economist I'm not the best person to answer this, is what's going to happen to the outbreak. When we look at China, when we look at South Korea, we see basically this has been a one-quarter story, right? The outbreak started, cases rose, they went into lockdown, and a couple of months later they're coming out of lockdown. So if we see the US following a similar trajectory, then we could be back at work by the middle of the year. If we don't, if containment measures are not effective, if this takes much longer, like some epidemiologists are saying it will, then the lockdown lasts longer, the economic damage is longer, and the stimulus has to be that much bigger.
So, Tom, There is a lot of unknowns, as you just pointed out, as we've heard over and over again, and that makes forecasting difficult. But one of the areas that has been obviously the backbone of the U.S. economy has been the consumer. The consumer has been fully employed, wage growth 3% or so. How bad do you think the employment numbers could get? We saw that 3.28 million jobless claims earlier in the week, and that spooked a lot of people.
Yeah, so we are clearly on the cusp of a surge in unemployment. There are a lot of people in the U.S. who work on a sort of casual basis, who work in the gig economy, who work in the services sector. Vast numbers of them have already been shown the door. More are going to go in the same direction in the weeks ahead. We're going to see a spiral higher in unemployment. The 3.3 million number that we saw in the latest jobless claims was significantly higher than expectations, but you saw the market didn't really react to it. So you can see investors are already thinking about some really serious worst case scenarios in terms of where unemployment goes. The critical thing here is getting money into these people's pockets, right? We need to get money into these people's pockets so they don't default on their mortgage obligations, they don't default on their car loans. And when the outbreak is under control, we've got households who are not significantly impaired so that we can get that consumer back into play and hopefully have some growth again by the time we get into the later months of the year.
Tom, thanks so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. Tom Orlik is the chief economist for Bloomberg Economics, giving us his outlay his outlook for the U.S. economy for 2020, recognizing that all economists, are calling out the fact that there's just so much we don't know about the curve of the global pandemic, and now we'll obviously have a big input as to kind of how economies come back from what is sure to be an historic contraction in GDP in the second quarter in the United States. Coming up, we're going to take a look at more how the doctors are actually doing in the emergency rooms with this virus. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The three-day stock market rally has grinded to a halt as investors assess the pandemic's impact on the economy. U.S. stocks are down 3%. Oil is falling 4%. The federal government is about to pour $2 trillion of aid into the economy, but investors worry it may not be enough. Most economists think the U.S. is in a recession right now or will be soon. As for the rest of us, pessimism is growing. The University of Michigan's Consumer Sentiment Index dropped to its lowest level in over a decade. And President Trump is attacking General Motors on Twitter today. He says the company isn't moving fast enough to make hospital ventilators. Trump indicated he might invoke the Defense Production Act to force the company to move faster on the devices. Donna Wilson, Bloomberg Radio.
Hi, I'm your host, Smokey Colbert, filling in for Smokey, because after 75 years of...
Only you can prevent wildfires.
Turns out there's much more to say. Nearly 90% of wildfires are caused by us humans being careless, dumping our used barbecue coals willy-nilly. Guess the song was wrong. We did start the fire. That's why I respect Mother Nature and her trees, whether coniferous or new car scented. Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
In-depth analysis, concise reporting, need-to-know global business news. Around the world and across the markets, Bloomberg connects the dots for decision makers. Stay on top of today's headlines. Follow big breakthroughs in tech. Understand the latest political issues. See how the world's wealthiest are spending their money. Track what's happening in the markets, and much more. Subscribe today to Bloomberg, the global standard for business reporting. Get it all at Bloomberg.com/subscription.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now, it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
Well, there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
Melissa from Michigan. I work an extra part-time job serving lunch at my child's school, but I still can't afford to put food on our table.
Daniel from California. Choosing whether to pay the rent or pay to fix the car to get to work doesn't leave us with much at all. Now we can't even pay for meals.
Hunger is a story we can end. End it at feedingamerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
Business is like a puzzle. Can you make a call given the swirl of data? Get all the pieces.
They're getting mixed signals from governments.
East failed to gain traction.
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119. And around the globe, the Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Balance of Power with David Weston.
Coming up on Balance of Power, breaking news just across the Bloomberg terminal. The House has passed a $2 trillion stimulus package. We'll have the latest on that for you. Plus, we're also going to speak with Dr. Adam Brown, President of Emergency Services at Envision Healthcare, about how they are fighting this corona fight on the front lines in the emergency room. But first, let's go to Charlie Pella and get you a Bloomberg Business Flash. Charlie.
Hi, thank you very much, Paul Sweeney. A down Friday here with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ continuing to drop. Right now, we have got the S&P down 75. That's a decline right now of 2.9%. Stock showing signs of fatigue after the fastest rally in 9 decades as the coronavirus pandemic continues to roil markets. The Dow is down 713, lower by 3.2%. NASDAQ NASDAQ down 224 points, a drop right now of 2.9%. The 10-year, the yield, 0.73%. Gold is down 0.2%, 1627 the ounce. Gold down 3.88 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 5.9%. All about demand, all about the price war between Russia and Saudi Arabia. We have got West Texas Intermediate crude now at $21.26 a barrel. The University of Michigan's National Consumer Sentiment Index posted the biggest drop in more than a decade as the coronavirus forced a shutdown of U.S. employers and disrupted daily life. And with that story, here's Bloomberg's Vinny Del Giudice.
Ratings for current conditions also dropped by the most since 2008, and a measure of the economic outlook hit a more than 3-year low. The consumer sentiment data provided another view of the virus following last week's historic surge in jobless claims. Separately, the government reports consumer spending edged higher in February, a trend economists say is destined to reverse. Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
And again, repeating our top story, the House has cleared a $2 trillion stimulus package for President Trump's signature. Recapping, equities lower with the S&P down 69, a drop there of 2.6%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Balance of Power continues. Back we go once again. Here's your host, Paul Sweeney.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. I'm Paul Sweeney sitting in for David Wilson. As Charlie was just reporting, the House did pass the $2 trillion fiscal stimulus plan. Let's get some details on that with Laura Davison. She covers Congress for Bloomberg News. So, Laura, what do we know that just happened in a couple minutes ago in Congress?
Yeah, so they just wrapped up this process that's been going on for more than a week. They did it sort of by a procedural voice vote, so individual members didn't have to vote. There was a little bit of concern going into this that there might be a member who was objecting. He did object, but it was never really in doubt that this was going to pass. You know, over in the Senate, we saw this bill pass 96-0. The only members who didn't vote the floor were members who were not present because they either had been diagnosed with coronavirus or were self-quarantining as a result of being potentially exposed.
So, Laura, how does this work now? Does this go to the president's desk right now? What's the timing there?
Yes, the president said he wants to sign this as soon as possible, and they're actually in the House skipping some of the kind of formal enrollment of the bill that they would typically do. They're getting this over to the president as soon as this afternoon to sign. There's a lot of concern and interest in getting some of these measures that are in the bill, loans to small businesses, individual payments going out to households, getting those started as soon as possible, and they need the president's signature before agencies can start acting on that. So there's really time is of the essence here.
And just lastly, soon as possible is measured in weeks, not days, correct?
For a lot of in terms of the payments going out for checks, whether that's direct deposit or via mail, it's looking like weeks. It could actually be as much as a month to a month and a half, particularly for those who are getting paper checks if the IRS doesn't have direct deposit information. For small business loans, that's looking like about a process of 10 days for that money to start going out.
Very good. Laura Davison, thanks so much for that. Laura Davison, Bloomberg News, covers Congress, just giving us the color on the House passing the $2 trillion fiscal stimulus plan now on its way to President Trump's desk for signature. Let's switch gears and go back to the emergency rooms, the front lines of where the coronavirus is being fought. Dr. Adam Brown, he's president of emergency services at Envision Healthcare. Dr. Brown, thanks so much for joining us. Tell us what Envision is, what you do, and how you're reacting to and dealing with this crisis.
Sure, Paul. Well, thanks for having me on. So Envision Healthcare is an organization that we support hospitals from across the United States. We have about 27,000 clinicians that work for us, and specifically in the emergency department, we have about 11,000 clinicians. Now, you ask, what do? I'm an emergency physician by training, and now, as you said, I'm the president of emergency medicine, which really is the front lines right now for COVID-19 and for what we've been preparing for about the 4 weeks or so.
So give us a sense, Dr. Brown, how it is in the average emergency room around the country. In New York here, it's a hot spot, obviously, but more hot spots are popping up. We're hearing stories about, lack of equipment, lack of protective equipment. Just give us a sense of where you think it is right now.
Sure. So it's really a mixed bag. At the moment in the Northeast, as you said, in New York, northern New Jersey, we're seeing a lot of patients come into our emergency departments with respiratory illness. As a matter of fact, today I looked at a report that about 1/3 of the patients in many of our hospitals are coming in with respiratory type illnesses. However, when you compare that with some of our other hospitals around the country, we've seen pretty significant declines as people have started to socially distance, not doing the sporting events, no traumatic accidents, like I shouldn't say no, but very few traumatic accidents, et cetera. So it's been somewhat mixed, but that's given some of those hospitals an opportunity to really prepare for what we will see and what we believe we will see in the upcoming weeks. Clearly on the front lines, our physicians are concerned about PPE, and we've had some of our clinicians that have been quarantined. Even some have had COVID-19. Either they've gotten that within the community and some may have gotten it from the hospital. It's a little too early to tell at this point, but that's what we're seeing mostly in some of our hospitals.
So is there an opportunity to shift resources around, whether it's personnel or supplies, from a less hit area to one that's maybe getting more patients?
That's right. So I lead our task force for COVID-19 for Envision Healthcare, and that was one of our big areas of focus really over the last 4 weeks. We're identifying opportunities for us to utilize our teams in different ways. We did the right thing by canceling some of the elective surgeries to really help flatten the curve and preserve that PPE that has become so important. And so, of course, that means that there's been some decline in utilization of surgeons and anesthesia, our anesthesia clinicians. And so we're looking at ways to redeploy them to areas of hotspots. We also have a team called our Envoy team. That is our physician dispatch team that we are looking how we can utilize those physician assistants, nurse practitioners, and physicians themselves to areas of need. And then one other area that we've looked at is virtual health. We've developed a platform so that we could work with our hospital partners for even some of our quarantine docs who are not sick, who want to still get in there and work, and we have a number of those, to be able to use a virtual health platform to pipe in and be able to take care of patients. That protects our patients, that protects our doctors, and that also reduces the PPE need. And one of the other solutions that we've done, which has been very helpful to us, is we developed a website, envisionhealth.com/coronavirus. It's a public site. That's really become our center of truth for our organization. We have a number of resources for our clinicians, but also for our hospital partners and the public at large. So those have been some of the things that we've done to develop resources, not only for our hospitals, but also for our clinicians on the ground.
So, Doctor, just real quickly, 30 seconds, based upon what the feedback you're getting from your doctors in the field, what is your sense of timing when this curve flattens?
Oh, I think it's too early to say. I mean, one thing I do need to say about our clinicians, they are our healthcare heroes, and they are doing an amazing job out there preparing or either in the middle of the storm. We're hopeful that we'll start to see this improve, but we really don't know. If we see what happened in other countries, we may be in this for the next few weeks, maybe even a couple of months, but it's really too early to tell at this point.
Dr. Adam Brown, thank you so much for joining us. We appreciate your perspective. Dr. Brown is president of emergency services at Envision Healthcare. They supply a large number of emergency doc workers to the emergency rooms around the country, clearly getting a kind of a frontline view of what's going on out there. And so maybe talking about shifting some resources, it might be a scenario that could provide some relief to some of the hardest hit areas, because as New York State Governor Andrew Cuomo has been so clearly stating in his daily press conferences that New York is the epicenter right now, but once that once that curve fades, it was likely you're going to see epicenters emerge in other parts of the country. We're starting to see that now in Boston and New Orleans. So maybe it's shifting resources from one area to the other might be something. And so we appreciate Dr. Brown's comments. Looking at the markets today, again, as Charlie Pellet's been reporting, we are still off, but we are off our lows, off about 2% on the S&P 500. The Dow's off 2.25%. Call that 500 points, 22,030 on the Dow. This is Bloomberg.
Imagine being denied an apartment because of your religion, or your race, or because you have children, or a disability.
It's so wrong.
Yes, but who has the power to stop this?
You do. Each of us has the power. The law is on your side. It's illegal for landlords to discriminate because of race, color, religion, sex, national origin, disability, or familial status. If you suspect that you have experienced housing discrimination, file a complaint with HUD immediately so we can investigate it. Fair housing is your right.
Use it.
To learn more, visit HUD.gov/fairhousing. That's HUD.gov/fairhousing. Or call 1-800-669-9777. 1-800-669-9777. A public service message from HUD in partnership with the National Fair Housing Alliance.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC. Member FINRA, NYSE, SIPC.
Coronavirus is affecting us all. During this difficult time, we're helping critical workers to make essential journeys by public transport. So, from Monday the 23rd of March, TfL will be operating a gradually reduced service on our network. Some stations will be closed so that we can keep key stations open. Night tube and night overground services have already stopped running, but our extensive night bus service will continue. The Waterloo and City line is now closed. We will keep you updated as our services change. Search TfL.
Hiya, it's Mel B. I'm just calling to say whether you're searching for a babe, a boo, or a bit of fun, there's one B you can always rely on. Badoo, the dating app which matches you with people based on your interests. Now more than ever, we want to be connected. You're more than just a photo, so be your true self and connect with a like-minded community. There's a new B in town. Download the Badoo app today. Badoo, date honestly.
Listen to Raj go. Polyrhythm, paradiddle. A drum solo so epic, he nearly forgot his mom's birthday back in Delhi. Good thing Raj has Western Union on his phone and can send money quickly online. Download the app today. This service is provided by Western Union. FX gains apply.
Did you know your favorite radio stations are in your pocket? Yes, the TuneIn app lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio anywhere you want. To see all the stations broadcasting in your area, find the local radio section on the home screen. Keep it local with TuneIn.
It's TuneIn Sports on this day, March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
But there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique
to listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this. Click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
You love TuneIn for live breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
Develop that. What will happen to the on the water? Well, you're going to have waves hitting it. You're going to have solar. How are you going to develop plants? How are you going to develop vegetation and farming? That sort of thought process happens at NJIT. We actually plan out what will the city look like. How do we develop that? So in 10 years, we're actually ready to take on those challenges when we have our first development in the water. NJIT also has been doing a lot of work in self-healing materials. So taking the polymers and the new material that we have in our material sciences departments and putting them into things like concrete, things like steel, reinforcing our soil.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma.
The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
From Bloomberg World Headquarters, I'm Charlie Pelleton. Move lower with the Dow, the S&P, and NASDAQ all declining. Stocks showing signs of fatigue after the fastest rally in 9 decades as the coronavirus pandemic continues to roil markets. Treasuries gained, oil plunged. Right now, we have got the 10-year up 1 and 1/32. The yield right now 0.73%. Gold down 0.4%, 16.24 the ounce. West Texas Intermediate crude down 5.8%, 21.30 a barrel. Brent is at 24.64, down 6.5%. So again, recapping here, stocks lower. S&P 500 index down 61, had been down as much as 4%. Right now, the S&P lower by 2.4%. I'm Charlie Pellet. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash, and Balance of Power continues. Once again, here's your host for the Friday edition, Paul Sweeney.
Charlie Pellet, thank you so much. From the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio, I'm Paul Sweeney. As Charlie was mentioning, markets are selling off. Part of the issue, for the healthcare community is getting supplies. Hand sanitizer is the first and foremost thing that we first learned about when we learned about the coronavirus, is to keep the hands clean, washing hands, and sanitizer. Chris Swanger, President and CEO of the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States. He's also President and CEO of the Foundation for Advancing Alcohol Responsibility. Joins us to talk not alcohol per se, but hand sanitizer. Chris, thanks so much for joining us. Give us a sense of kind of what the industry is doing, can do, is likely to do going forward.
You got it, Paul, and thank you for having me. Well, despite all the challenges in the marketplace at this point in COVID-19, it's been an exhilarating time for the industry, despite some of the economic hardships our industry is facing. Well over 500 distilleries around the country have pivoted to start providing hand sanitizer, in large part for donation to the emergency responder community, hospitals, and so forth. So, of course, we would all rather be making great distilled spirits and great whiskey, right? But this is a time where the industry has really galvanized itself to help out in communities all around the country.
Chris, how quickly can a typical distillery make that pivot?
Pretty quick, as a matter of fact. We're navigating through some challenges with the Food and Drug Administration in terms of their guidance, but we have initiated discussions with them. The industry, over the last 10 days, was following the guidelines instituted for hand sanitizer with the World Health Organization. The WHO has provided guidance for the industry that quickly turn around and provide hand sanitizer through 2 different forms of alcohol. One is undenatured alcohol. That's the alcohol that has a taste profile, and then denatured alcohol. Most distilleries have undenatured alcohol that has the taste profile, right? So there's a little bit of concern, and it's a legitimate one, that if an adolescent were to consume undenatured alcohol, it could be harmful for them. So we're working with the FDA. We want to make sure that the hand sanitizer that's out there is safe and is used for the emergency response community and the healthcare community and so forth. I have to say this, working closely with the COVID-19 task force from the White House, they've been very, very supportive. And it's just a unique moment in our industry's history. And hopefully we're part of the greater good to really beat back COVID-19.
Chris, what's the sense you're hearing from your members as to timing when they can really ramp up at scale?
They've already begun to do that. Many of our large distilleries have already begun to do that. Companies like Pernod Ricard and others, Bacardi, have already announced publicly, and many others are as well. So I think they can turn it around pretty quickly. Many of the small distilleries around the country are pumping out hand sanitizer like you wouldn't believe. We launched, the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States launched a portal 4 days ago to where everybody in the industry can come together in one-stop shop site when they need resources or supplies or distribution. it's really a great resource because we're not naturally prone to make and distribute hand sanitizer. So the portal that we launched is a great platform for everybody to kind of share what they need and access points to make sure that we continue to deliver hand sanitizer all around the country.
Chris, is there a sense that when the industry really does make that pivot and is really up and running at scale, how much they could produce either on a daily basis or a weekly basis?
Pretty significant, I would say. And hopefully, COVID-19 crisis will be over soon. We'll see. Nobody knows how long that's going to take. But I think in establishing the portal, we'll get a better sense in terms of the volume. And hopefully, we'll have excess supply of hand sanitizer as we navigate back to making great whiskey at some point.
So, Chris, we just got news that the House passed the $2 trillion fiscal stimulus plan. Was there anything, or what was in there, if anything, for the Distilled Spirits Council?
A great question, and great news that the House did pass it. It should be signed by the President here within the next hour or so. An important provision that was included in there was the exemption of the federal excise tax for undenatured alcohol that are used for hand sanitizers. Of course, there's a federal excise tax on distilled spirits products. It's one of the highest excise taxes in the nation. And we don't want to impose an excise tax on these distilleries where in large part they're giving us hand sanitizer away. So we do have to work with the FDA to get an appropriate guidance on undenatured alcohol. That is the potable alcohol, and we'll be working with them. But that is an important provision because all of these distilleries have had to shut down their tasting rooms and visits to the distilleries and so forth. And, of course, the impact of the on-premise shutting down, the bars and restaurants and so forth. The other thing that I would have to say, there's great provisions in there to help small businesses. There's over 2,100 distilleries around the country, and it's been a great American growth phenomenon over the last 10 to 12 years. So the small business relief will be very, very important to help keep many of these distilleries in tow, while there certainly many of them are participating to give out hand sanitizer throughout the country. But the federal excise tax exemption is a good break that will allow those distilleries to keep investing in making hand sanitizer to give out to communities all around the country.
So, Chris, just lastly, so I know there's a lot of the smaller distillers around the country, and they were first and foremost kind of raising their hands. How about some of the bigger companies as well, the conglomerates?
Sure. I think all of them are now starting to look at this. Pernod Ricard, great company based in France, but big operations in Fort Smith, Arkansas. They're already delivering hand sanitizer, working closely with FEMA, and truckloads are going up to New York as we speak. Bacardi, great company with operations in Puerto Rico, are providing hand sanitizer. I was just there a couple of weeks ago watching them make rum, but now they've quickly turned to make hand sanitizer, and you're going to see many more of the bigger, larger distilled spirits companies starting to produce hand sanitizer in mass as well. And that'll be a great complement to many of the distilleries around the country that are already doing it.
Hey, Chris, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate you letting us know what's going on in the industry. Some good news on at a time when we can certainly use it. Chris Swanger, he's the president and CEO of the Distilled Spirits Council of the United States, giving us some color there, how the distilling industry is actually pivoting from making distilled spirits to making hand sanitizer and getting that and donating that hand sanitizer as well. So, a great move by that industry. It's clearly one of the issues needed. So, very cool story. Good way to end it this hour. Looking at the markets, coming back just a smidge, we're down about 2.2%. That's 57 points on the S&P. That's 2572 there. 22,000 on your Dow Jones. That's down 550 points. Coming up, Bloomberg Business Week with Carol Massar and Jason Kelly. I'm Paul Sweeney, and this is Bloomberg.
Are you curious what others are listening to on TuneIn? Head to the trending section under Browse to see the most popular stations and podcasts among TuneIn listeners right now. Check it out. You might just discover something new for yourself.
It's Tune In Sports on this day. March 27th, 1988. The Chicago Bulls and Atlanta Hawks match up in the Georgia Dome in Atlanta. Now, it draws a crowd of 62,046, the largest in any game in the NBA history. And the Bulls win 89-74.
But there's no question the spotlight today will focus on Dominique. Given what happened last week, I would think there's some incentive for Dominique to
listen to conversations breaking down the moments just like this, click on Sports to be part of the discussion on TuneIn.
Leave it to the New York Times to make the most intelligent pop music podcast out there.
Welcome to the New York Times Popcast.
On the Popcast, the Times music staff gets together for a weekly roundtable on the hottest topics in popular music. From award show autopsies and reactions to new releases to difficult-to-process scandals and emerging themes in the music landscape, hear distinguished music critics share their perspectives on the latest music news, songs, albums, and artists of note on the New York Times Popcast. Search and favorite Popcast to join the conversation.
Strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
There are times when you have to go it alone, but these should not be those times. With the medical crisis